You're live.
Hi, everybody. And tonight we have a very special live stream. We're not just simply going to be pointing and laughing at stupid like we typically do. Tonight's going to be a little bit deeper. We're still going to have fun and everything. But we have Dr. Matt Sweeney with us tonight. I know that months back I asked, why hasn't some psychology PhD candidate done his dissertation on sovereign citizens, because I thought that was a great thing that you could write a dissertation about. Turns out that Dr. Matt has done that, and he sent me his dissertation, and after a few hiccups, we got him on tonight, and he's going to tell us what he found in writing his dissertation. Of course, I have a Marvel Girl and Clifford Reynolds here tonight. As always, Cliff will be reading your super chats. So at first, my game plan is that we're going to have Matt talk about what he found in his research. And then we're going to take audience questions. So if you have any questions about a particular brand of sovereign citizen, then we can certainly get into that. But Matt, the first thing that I think we should get into, somebody's got some background noise going on.
I was about to ask, who's scraping a floor?
Right. Is somebody doing some home improvements that we don't know about?
Sorry, that may have been me muting myself.
Okay. So
I don't think so.
Just for the audience, I don't know what everybody knows and doesn't know. Tell everybody what a dissertation is, or a thesis.
So a dissertation is essentially writing a book as the culmination of everything that you've learned in your particular subject area. So for me, my PhD is in criminology and criminal justice. So it was looking at more of the criminal element of a certain subject. For me, I chose mostly extremism, which included sovereign citizens.
Okay.
Excuse me 1 second. Cliff, is that you? Are you moving something, hon?
Not that I know of. I'll try muting.
Yeah,
Okay,
everybody
I'll mute too.
Yeah, mute and just unmute to talk, because every now and then I hear something. It sounds like something being dragged across a wood floor. So along with that dissertation, my understanding is, I only have a master's degree, so I never had to write a dissertation. But my understanding is, once you write it, you have to defend your dissertation like in front of a panel, basically of professors. So can you just quickly walk us through that process so that everybody has a good feel for the rigor of the basically what a dissertation is, in my estimation, is you have to basically write a book, and it can't be like just a regurgitation of something. It has to be basically novel research that you've done that hasn't been done before. It's got to be something new, not just something somebody's already done. So can you walk us through that real quick?
Yeah, so generally the way that it works is that you pick a subject, pick something that interests you, that you know there isn't a lot of research on. So for me, I chose sovereign citizens and a couple of other groups that not a lot of research was done. And you build a committee, which is about 3 to 5 different people who are all PhD professors and generally have an expertise in the area that you're working with. And you go through essentially a process of, you write up a proposal that's about 50 or 60 pages, you submit that to them, and then you have your first defense, which is you go in and you defend that proposal. They can ask questions, and it's all public. So any random person off the street can walk in and just start asking questions. There's no preventing anybody from coming in. So generally it's a lot of faculty that show up and not many people from the public, unless it's friends and family. And then once they approve that kind of research proposal, essentially, you then actually go do it. So in my case, what I did was I wanted to look at websites and kind of written material. So I used a couple of different keywords and just started on Google and went through the first 10 pages or so of the Google search terms, hitting certain criteria. Like for sovereigns, I think it's like 28 USC 15 A, B, C, and D, which is the United States as a corporation, language. And I pulled out every website, went through them. Yes, sovereign. No, not sovereign. And then what I would do is from there, I used a different piece of software that would then find every outward hyperlink. And I just repeated this process essentially until I discovered no more websites. And in the end, I ended up with over 60 some odd websites for sovereigns, and a number of others for other groups that I looked at as well. And at the end of it, you write it up. I think mine ended up being about 270 pages of actual writing and about 300 and something total. And then you go before that same committee. So for me, I actually graduated during COVID. So mine was on Zoom, which meant a lot more people showed up because everybody was home. And you essentially present what you did, what you found, and anybody in the room is able to ask questions. So generally you go back and forth and it can last a few hours. The longest I've heard one lasting before was about 4.5 of people just asking questions over and over again. And essentially you have to defend your point of view. You have to defend what you did, how you did it, why you did it. And then you go before them, and then the committee throws everybody out of the room, including you, and they talk about it, about whether they're going to pass you or not. And then, so that's like the most nerve-wracking 20 minutes of your life when you're sitting outside of a room just waiting to be called back in to find out whether you passed or not. It isn't always a guarantee. Generally in the United States, it's kind of a formality, but you can not pass depending on what your committee actually thinks.
Okay, great. That was a good explanation. That's exactly what I was looking for, just so that everybody knows. The reason that we just went through this whole thing just now asking you those questions is so the audience can understand that this isn't a guy that did a Google search. He didn't go to Wikipedia this morning and read up on sovereign citizens and we have him on and call him an expert. This is a guy that did a year and a half probably research on your dissertation. And the whole way through, I'm assuming you had an advisor that was already a PhD, because you're just dissertation advisor that kind of shepherds you through that in some way. So yeah, we got somebody that, unlike the rest of us, that we point and laugh and make fun of them, and we know a little bit, and we do some clicks here and there and research some laws. Like this guy dedicated a substantial portion of time to it. So Dr. Matt, just give us an overview of what you found and maybe what was surprising and what leads people down this rabbit hole. And I'll just give you the floor for as long as you need.
Yeah, so essentially what I found was I was looking at how structured the movement was, how interconnected are the websites. We hear about a lot of different, quote unquote gurus, people like David Windmiller, Anna von Reitz. You hear about these people constantly, but how much do they actually communicate? Like, do they link back and forth to each other? And one of the things that I looked at was if they did hyperlink from one website to another, what was the context of it? Were they using it to justify their own viewpoint or things like that? And I actually found that for the most part, while gurus are generally fighting for attention and saying my ideology is the best one, they're really collaborative. For the most part, they are hyperlinking back and forth from one website to the next to be able to actually essentially prove their point, has been the biggest thing that I found as I was looking through it. And one of the kind of things that I also noticed kind of going through a lot of these websites is there's a very big dichotomy between websites that are attempting to get people to believe it and to use things like selling toolkits, how to get out of foreclosure, how to pay off your debt by this random method that you send a letter to the IRS or the State Department. And you generally find those websites. Then you find the ones that are purely ideological, that have a treasure trove of PDF documents that they claim prove all of these different things, and they go above and beyond just trying to make a quick buck. And we kind of see that with people like David Windmiller or Anna von Reitz, who are not necessarily, don't seem like they're trying to make money off it, but are in fact trying to get more people involved. compared to the people who have kind of the get rich quick schemes, where you kind of see they come and go and they sell these toolkits for, $1,000, and it's supposed to get you out of your mortgage. And that was kind of a really interesting part of it, was kind of really seeing just how collaborative they generally are, and really how diverse the ideology was. Prior to, as I was doing it, I actually noticed it's a lot of mixture of various conspiracy theories. You see streams that are more religious in nature. You see streams that are more, kind of that First Amendment auditor, that constitutionalist perspective. And then you just kind of see the ones that hyper focus on one particular law or one particular line in one particular law, and saying that that's how it proves this item, or that's how it proves this. And most of the time, when we start to actually look at a lot of these websites, you do find those glaring holes in what they're actually saying, that they're not reading the entire thing. And I kind of equate it to a lot of extremist groups that are religiously oriented, that take one line of one section of one chapter of the Bible or another religious text and use it to their advantage in some way.
Right. And sorry to interrupt, but that is true as far as I've seen across pretty much all conspiracy theories. Is they'll take one little nugget out of, an entire text, and then be like, look, see, there it is right there. Like the flat earthers will say that the FAA, when they're doing, well, the FAA doesn't do flight training, but flight training manuals say that they're assuming a non-rotating Earth, but they leave out
one thing.
Yeah, and they'll say, look, flight instructors say that there's a non-rotating Earth, but they leave out the part where it also says that they also assume a perfectly rigid aircraft. There's no such thing as a perfectly rigid aircraft. They just do it for the simplicity of, we don't need to worry about all this flexing of the
Right
wings
now,
and all this
right
stuff.
this second.
Yeah, at this juncture in training. So there's a lot of cherry picking in every aspect of this extremism. The just in my video today that aired right before this, there was somebody in a post office that was citing poster 7 that said that she could record in the post office. And they always read the one part that says that they can record, and they leave out the part that says, except where prohibited by, security forces or, management or, all these other things. They leave that part out. They pick the part that they want, and they throw out the rest as if, and then they declare victory. Was that your experience?
Yeah, a lot of the kind of fundamental belief that kind of whittle it down to one kind of central point. We kind of see this example across all of the sovereign kind of arguments is in 1871, there was a change to the kind of status of the District of Columbia. And it was this idea that DC does not exist within any state, specifically formatted to not exist within a state so that no state received preferential treatment at the federal level. Right. That was why they did it. And it made a lot of sense. But there's been a lot of back and forth on how big DC was the city of Alexandria part of DC, Georgetown, all of these areas. And the biggest thing was that in 1871, they essentially abolished the quote unquote corporation that controlled the District of Columbia. Essentially, it was a corporation because it had to buy and sell items and supplies and actually build the U.S. Capitol. And they took this to mean that, there's this corporation, therefore all U.S. citizens are corporate citizens, which is why when we see, I think it's 28 USC is the certain code. It says that the United States, quote, can be a federal corporation, because it's still including the District of Columbia as its own unique entity that isn't a part of any individual state. So they whittle it down to that one argument, and it balloons up from there. And you can kind of see a lot of that that perspective when you start seeing them throwing out things like UCC for Uniform Commercial Code, and I'm not driving, I'm traveling. I only need a driver's license if I'm actually
commerce.
in commerce, because they see it as being a corporate entity, as a corporate identity. And that's, it's kind of the idea of all capital letters. They don't realize that, oh, if your last name is McCarthy, well, you may actually spell it with 2 capital letters versus all capitals or all lowercase. So they just standardize it so that way it all matches everything. And it's just easier that way for every government agency.
Yeah, because like I see it on road signs all the time. Like when you're going down the road and you enter a new town, and it says "Welcome to the town of whatever incorporated 1843." That just means that that town became a town and was incorporated into the county or the state on that date. Just like if I adopt a child, I'm incorporating that child into my family. They don't understand the difference between a corporation as a business and the word incorporation.
It's not an LLC.
Right. You're incorporating just means adding. You're just adding something to something else. If I sprinkle sugar into my coffee, I'm incorporating sugar into my coffee. They do that a lot. Like
they play with language.
They pick words that sound like other words and then say, see, there you go. Like they'll say, and I'm sure you've heard this one, like a court docket. They'll say, it says dock. That means maritime law. And it's like, what? So the word, it sounds a little bit like another word that doesn't mean anything.
Or policy officer.
Yeah,
instead of
police officer. Yeah.
Yes.
Policy enforcer. And I'm sure at some point you were probably just pulling your hair out, like because I know I spend probably 10 to 20 hours a week looking at this stuff. But if I was to sit down and really put my nose to the grindstone like you did, I think I would probably go insane at how silly these people do. They're just grasping at straws, but yet they still seem to get more and more recruits into their movement.
I think it has to do with not paying your way too, though.
Tell me if I'm wrong, Matt, that I think the slippery slope into a lot of this stuff, because I've seen it firsthand, is somebody gets in trouble and then all of a sudden this guru shows up and says, you don't need to pay that reckless driving ticket. Just use my magic words in court. Go in there and challenge jurisdiction and say these magic words, and maybe buy my packet. Is that a thing in your experience? As much as that seems to be how most people get into it, in my experience.
Yeah, and historically, it's been that way too. A lot of the sovereign ideology comes from the Posse Comitatus, which was a 1970s, 1980s kind of anti-government group that rose really quickly, looking at the power of the county, why they always ask for the county sheriff, because they think that's the only legitimate form of local government. And that all came about because of the farm crisis in the 1970s and 1980s, when you had all these farmers losing homes, losing farms and ranches because they couldn't afford to essentially plant the next season, because they kept having to take out loan upon loan upon loan to get it back. And here comes this man with this item that says, well, you never saw the money they loaned you. They didn't hand you a briefcase full of cash. They handed you a paper check. So just pay them back with a paper check. And eventually it died out because the paper checks didn't work.
Right.
The banks were still coming for them, and a lot of their leaders died off in the mid 80s. And then you see the sovereign movement kind of come back in the housing crisis in 2008. When that bubble burst, you have all these people who are losing their homes to foreclosure. And then you have this, I can get you out of foreclosure. You don't need to go through this whole process. Just send them these documents and transfer your deed to this entity, and that will protect your home. And that's actually led to a lot of issues with, I think it was in 2010 or so, HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Office for the United States, actually released specific, very explicit guidance for HUD staff on how to actually deal with sovereign citizens. when they came across them in their daily job, because they said it was pretty frequent that they were coming across them.
Right.
And
Oh, wow.
There was a guy, he's in prison now, Anthony Williams, and he was running that scam.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly with immigrants who were in trouble with their mortgages. And the way that he did it was, he said, you don't have to pay your mortgage anymore if you're in default. Send what you can of your mortgage to me, and I'll send the mortgage company this magic paperwork that'll make your mortgage go away. Of course it didn't, and they all went into default and had their homes foreclosed on. But even after foreclosure,
They still defended him.
some of them were still defending him, saying that he was the real deal. Of course, now he's in prison for it for I think he got like 20 years or something. So
I have a question.
Yeah,
go ahead, Cliff. First.
so I was going to say he targeted the Filipino community specifically.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question. How much did the Moors like fall into the groups you were looking at too? And how they
bit.
like just walk into a house and take it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, they're a weird subset
Mm-hmm.
because they don't traditionally follow a lot of the kind of basic kind of sovereign citizen version of it.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like the Dr. Pepper to Coke example of like they're made by the same company but kind of different.
Okay.
And their beliefs come from kind of a warped interpretation of it, which ironically it was kind of a slow burn from kind of the generic sovereign citizens out through the Moors, which are now, it seems to be becoming much more popular. I actually grew up in Massachusetts, and when the issue with Jamal happened on I-95,
Oh, yeah.
I got a ton of text messages and phone calls from friends and family being like, hey, did you see this? Aren't these the people that you look at? How are they here? And I'm like, they're
How are they
everywhere.
here? They're everywhere.
And I'm like, I'm just surprised it took this long. And a lot of it is kind of that idea that Moors are just slightly different than kind of that generic sovereign. And they take a different approach on it of less the corporatization of the United States and more this kind of I am indigenous to this area vis-a-vis these 6 laws that are not related or interrelated at all.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of go through that process. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with the treaties surrounding like indigenous rights. They kind of twist it to their perspective.
Oh, they twist the hell out of it. Okay.
And the Treaty of Peace and Friendship that had to do with the Barbary pirates and nothing to do with anything else.
No land.
It's really silly. So let me run this by you, because it's been my contention, and it still is, that the First Amendment auditors are on the spectrum. They're on the sovereign citizen spectrum. They're just more on the they're like sovereign citizen light. I don't know how much you've seen of the First Amendment auditors, but they sort of do the same things, just not as extreme. They cite laws that they've taken out of context. They push the boundaries. They're pushing back against what they see as overreach in the system. Have you had a chance to look at First Amendment auditors, and do you agree or disagree that they are on the spectrum at a minimum?
Yes. So I actually obviously watch your channel as well as several others, Ari, Natalie, Kick. I kind of keep abreast. That was really what kind of led me to you, was through other channels. And they definitely do have that perspective. And I think that poster 7 example that you kind of gave at the beginning of our chat was a big one, that yes, you can film here. Yes, you can do this, and you can do this. However, and that's the major factor, is if anybody tells you that work's are to stop, you have to stop. And that's the end of it. And it's that selective interpretation of these specific parts of a certain rule that actually make it what that rule is. There was as I mentioned before we had started, there was a PayPal Patty walked in the Houston Joint Processing Center, which is like the local jail. And he walked in, and there's all these families trying to visit inmates. And it's like, they're not going to let you film in there. It said on the front door, no cell phones allowed. but they film it and walk straight in. And it's this interpretation. Well, it's public. I can film here, even though it's specifically stated outright, no, you can't. And the kind of quote that you always get is, well, policy doesn't trump law. It does on private property. Even if it's public property owned by a county, in that case, the Harris County Sheriff's Office, it's still not open to the public. They can ask anybody to leave at any time because it is a secure facility. It's not intended for the public. It's intended for its specific use.
Yeah. And one of the examples that I use is when they say it's public property, I can film. And I'm like, does the little girls' room at the elementary school count? You know, it's public property.
Public building, yeah.
It's paid for by the public. My tax dollars go towards it. Can't film in there unless you really want a good, solid beat down and then a trip to jail.
Yeah. It's like you can't wander through an elementary school. You can't even get into the building.
You can't even get into one. Yeah. Now they
Potato tried to.
Oh, did she?
Long time ago.
She has no shame. It's just bottom of the barrel auditor here. Like she audits churches and synagogues, and once ran into an auditor who was doing an audit of a battered women's shelter. Like these people, yeah. That was Silence Boy audited a funeral. Like they have no shame. They only care about the clicks, you know, and the more extreme, the better. And I predicted this, almost a year ago, that it was going to get to a point where they were going to have to keep people excited and watching their videos. They were going to have to go more and more and more extreme. And that's what we're seeing now.
And I think the same holds true for a lot of the sovereign citizens. You kind of mentioned, I believe it was your video, where they're just trying to arrest everybody now. And it was I think it was the guy at the city council who tried to arrest everybody until he was slowly escorted out by the police being like, we're not doing this. And I think that's just it, is that you see a lot of the tactics don't work because judges, courts, police have started to get more knowledgeable about it. Originally, I think you'd have people coming in, well, I'm fighting this traffic ticket and I'm going to go in and scream about jurisdiction for 45 minutes. A judge 10, 15 years ago is going to be like, just get out. Case dismissed, just get out. I don't want to deal with you. And that's a win. It's, as we always hear about, it's not a win on the merits. It's a win on this technicality of you pissed off the judge enough that he's like, I have 600 other cases today on traffic tickets. Just get out. I don't want to deal with this one.
Right.
And
they argue it like it's a murder case.
Hey, Schrodinger.
Yes.
You're getting requests for slow mode, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Let's do that.
Yeah, and a lot of times you would find that judges would just give up on these very, very minor cases because it's not worth their time to sit there and argue and actually write out an official opinion on whether this judge has jurisdiction over this person who is appearing in front of them for this issue. But I think they've become much more keenly aware to what these people are doing and what is actually coming up in front of them. And I think it's a good thing because it actually means that you're going to find less and less that they are going to get away with it. And these schemes will no longer work the first time around. And that's generally what drives people deeper.
So the audience is obviously liking you and what you're saying. We got almost 700 people here. Let's go through some audience questions if you're keen to do that. And we'll start with, if there's any super chats, we'll start with those and then move on to any, if you've seen them, Cliff, just by floating by or people type them in at Cliff, if you would, so that he actually sees them.
You can at me too.
No, or at Tina. Yeah.
All right. So Stubbs the Wolf, new member, welcome to Tasers.
Yay.
The Turtle McGee, new member, welcome to the Bunkers. The Turtle McGee for $5 says, if no cases win on the actual merits, how do they keep attracting people? After a few arrests or court fails, why don't they quit?
Right.
I think it's a lot of it is that people come into it and then immediately go back out as soon as they have a big enough loss in court. They realize it won't work. But there's so many people promoting this. There's so many. The best example I can give is I actually, when I was first looking for a job, after my PhD, I interviewed with a company in Silicon Valley that did essentially YouTube outsourcing to private companies to do content moderation. And this was an analyst for them. And I wrote up it was like a 15-page report on, it was a 15-page report on the presence of sovereign citizens on every social media platform there is.
Oh, wow.
I looked through Amazon, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and went through all of them, and we were able to find content specific to them in every single one. So it's not that they just, if they lose, most likely those people end up getting bounced out of the belief system and realize this doesn't work. But there's 20 other people coming up in line behind them that are now just getting exposed to these ideas, especially as they cycle in new content on how to get around certain things.
Crazy. Cliff, you're
yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. So the pothole for $2 says, "Where can we find your dissertation?"
You can find it online. It's called I think it's Who's in Charge is the name of it. If you search Matthew Sweeney and Who's in Charge, you should be able to find it via ProQuest.
I have a copy of it too, Johnny. Yeah. I can email to you.
Okay. Back to it. Sonia Garlic for New Zealand $10 says, "But why are they so nasty?"
Yeah, why do they have to be so rude and disrespectful?
I think a lot of it comes down to frustration. That's really what it comes down to, is that they think this will work. Excuse me. And then it doesn't end up working, and they get irritated by that because they're expecting a certain response that they don't receive, and it confuses the individual. So, for example, the Department of Homeland Security actually put out a bulletin about 10, 12 years ago warning about sovereign violence.
Yes.
However, the bulletin itself only mentions violence occurs out of personal grievance as opposed to manifested by ideology. The ideology doesn't drive violence. It's the personal grievance of the individual getting frustrated and reacting violently because it's just not working. And they see their perspective as being the right one.
Right. And they're convinced that they're right.
But with all due respect, I see them walking into court and starting off like that. Like, just won't give the judge, I guess because they don't want to give the judge any respect. I get that.
Yeah, it's also because at that point you're seeing the second step in the process.
Right.
Yeah.
In most cases, that traffic stop is the first step or that first interaction. And you generally don't see them start off at, a level 10 or a level 8. They start off much lower and are very calm and respectful. And then when they don't get the responses, they go up and up and up.
Right.
There was that example of, I think it was West Virginia, the individual on a traffic stop and kept asking, well, what is your authority?
Yeah.
And then it's the chief of police getting really angry and yelling, "Mine."
Yeah.
And we
just saw that one. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, you kind of go back and forth on that of they slowly burn up. And then once they show up in court, they're already frustrated because they expected this to be thrown out before they even got there.
And they've already spent days in jail.
Yep.
I forgot the question I was going to ask now. Wait a minute.
While you're thinking of that, I'm just going to say, Matt, your Blue Yeti microphone is actually blue. And I have a red one, and then this one is black, and I've always wanted a blue one. So now you're my mortal enemy, and I hate you.
Why didn't you pick a blue one?
Because I just ordered one, and they sent it to me, and I was like, "This."
Oh my God!
Blue.
You do know you can choose what you want, right?
It's called a Blue Yeti. It's supposed to be blue.
No.
That's the way the universe works. It's false advertising, and now I have to hunt Dr. McDowell.
It's called Blue Yeti, not Mind Readers Incorporated.
I got mine at Best Buy.
Yeah.
I got this one at Best Buy. It's a Yeti Nano. It's actually the Yeti Nano is a great microphone. I'm really digging it. I just ordered.
That's what I have right here. It's the Nano. That's why I was like, when you were having some trouble, I was like, it's probably this because I've had the same problems.
Yeah, it was just one of the settings. It was
that's what you said it was.
But I just ordered a boom for it that comes with the pop filter and everything. So this is my travel microphone. As you can see, I'm in a hotel right now.
Are you really going? Okay.
You can shush over there.
No, you can.
But I had another question that, like Tina's, has escaped me. It was something about the nexus between two different
Oh, why do
groups.
they mine? I remember mine.
You go ahead.
So, like, do you know why? Like, is there anything they're being told about arguing on the side of the road? Like, that's your court date. Do they tell them to do that, or is that just something they all do? Because, duh.
I think it's a mixture. I think it's that they're given specific guidance on how to react in those situations. It's like having a script. As we always talk about, they have a particular script, and when you watch enough videos, you kind of see that script play out over and over and over again, and particularly in court, based on where they got it from, whether it's something they paid for or something they found. And I think a lot of it comes down to they have that script, and a lot of that script is you just keep asking questions because eventually they have to give you the answer you want, and the frustration mounts because they are not going to give you the answer you want.
Yeah, and I've seen that in so many cases. There's a guy, I don't know if he's even still around, but he was. His name is Mark Stevens, and he would actually he was one of the ones. He was one of the gurus that would sell the packets, and it was actually sort of like karate class. Like, he would have a class of students, and they would role play that they're in court, and so somebody would play the part of the judge that's asking them, the typical things that a judge asks at the beginning, like, here's your charges. Do you understand your charges? And their whole goal was to derail the whole thing by just challenging jurisdiction over and over. And he would publish these on YouTube. And there was one kid, I think his name was Robbie Anderson.
Oh, God, him.
Is that the right name?
He's a P. Barnes kid.
So he went simple traffic ticket, just a simple traffic ticket, and like he went on for like 2 years. And there's so much audio of him out there in court asking all of these questions that he learned from his guru, Mark Stevens, until he eventually pled guilty and went away, and nobody's ever heard of him in the past couple of years.
Oh no, he's still around, and
is he back again?
He's deeper, let's say, and he's packing, and his mom is afraid he's going to get in a gunfight with the cops.
And that's the thing with a lot of these, they lose, but they don't learn anything from it. And I say that a lot on my channel. I'm sure you've seen that. They just have an inability to learn. They just sort of dig in deeper. There's this guy, Long Island Audits, that he got arrested and he ended up pleading guilty. And part of his guilty plea was he had to write an apology letter to the cop that arrested him. So he did that. He wrote the apology letter. I have it on my channel. And he's still out there doing these audits. Like, he didn't learn anything from that experience. And what is it? And I'm asking you, Matt, because you may be in a position to know, why can't these people learn from experience? Like, as a child, you touch a hot stove, you burn your finger, you're like, ouch, okay, I'm not going to touch hot stoves anymore.
Don't want that to happen.
They remind me of, and just looking at you, I don't think you're probably not old enough to remember the old Simpsons cartoons, but there was one with Homer. There was a candy bar and it was hooked up to electrodes, and every time he would touch it, he'd go, ow. And then he'd try to grab it again. He'd go, ow. And like, he just kept doing it over and over and over. And he couldn't learn, don't touch the candy bar because it's going to shock you. And that's what I think that is happening with these auditors and sovereign citizens. Like, what psychologically is driving them to not be able to learn?
I think the big thing is, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about this, particularly in the realm of like sovereigns, and I think First Amendment auditors kind of fall into this as well. I think they're a little bit different, but for sovereigns, it's a cult-like behavior. It's I am fundamentally right, even in overwhelming evidence that I am wrong. And it's because this kind of illogical interpretation of statute and law that ultimately they fundamentally believe they will be found to be correct. and it will go the way they want it to because they've discovered this kind of magic switch to turn, general law and policy off and keep only what they view as legitimate law and policy. For kind of that First Amendment auditor community, I think it's a mixture. It's one, in many cases, it appears that a lot of their lifestyle, their means to continue, is derived by what you said, getting more clicks and more views. The more that I do this, the more that I will have people watching it, the more money I make through monetization on YouTube, or the more people I can get to support a Patreon or any other type of kind of money coming in. And
Right.
I think it comes down to that's generally what's driving them. And I think, again, that they think that eventually there will be some groundbreaking court case that enables them to film in any post office whenever they want, however long they want, regardless of what an official in that capacity says. You do have, as in that latest video, you do have that example of, DHS did say you can film in a federal building, but I can guarantee you, having worked in a federal building in the past, if I saw somebody walking down the hallway with a camera, I'm on the phone with the Federal Protective Service or the security in the building that are police officers being like, there's these guys walking up and down the 7th floor with a camera, and something weird is going on. And they're going to make contact and they're going to ask them to leave if they don't have legitimate business in that building.
Right.
And
they're
go ahead.
They're filming a YouTube video. They say, well, that's my official business, but that's not official business in that place. Like the post office is for sending and receiving mail and packages. The official business of making a YouTube video is not official business at the post office. It's just not. They think that whatever they're doing, if they're making a dime off of it, is their official business.
So they're driving commerce to get there.
Right. And that's another thing that and I want to get your take on this. Tina just reminded me of this. So I'm going to leave my other question aside because I think this is more important. If I'm a sovereign citizen and I say, the cop pulls me over and I say, I'm not driving for commerce, therefore I'm traveling, but I have a monetized YouTube channel that I'm going to post this video to, that makes it commerce.
Your question is?
I kind of see where you're going with it. I think in a court they would see it as two separate things. The act of driving was not intended on being pulled over, which resulted in the video that resulted in commerce. Kind of that it's that step by step, but because they were quote unquote traveling, they were then pulled over, which resulted in the video.
So
it's
intent.
There's no kind of, they didn't mean to create that video. They meant to go, as they would put it, I'm going from point A to point B and I'm not engaged in commerce. I think you could have a very good argument in the case of a First Amendment auditor who is purely going there to create content for YouTube, if nothing happens. And that's where they fall in line and potentially fall into problems with policies like the post office that you need to get permission if you're going to use it to make money. I think if I remember correctly, that's what Poster 7 says.
Image laws too. Like they don't think about that.
Yeah, like if they're filming in the post office, I know if you're doing like a TV show or a documentary, like a legit one, and somebody's on screen and you're going to publish this, then you have to get waivers from those people. But for some reason, the First Amendment auditors think they can just film anybody willy-nilly.
Because you're in public.
And put them on their monetized channels. I think that it might be a hard case to be made, but I think there's a case to be made.
I think there is.
That there's at a minimum some gray area there to where
it would definitely. I think it would take the individual who is in the video to address it.
Yes, the aggrieved person. Yeah,
because I know one of my relatives Ironically, their neighbor was actually a federally convicted child molester.
Oh.
And when the U.S. Marshals took him down, my cousin ended up on a newscast local to Boston of him on a swing set because they happened to live next door.
Oh, wow.
And when that happened, family members went irate because that was the news story that was coming up showing my
Right.
7-year-old cousin swinging on a swing set. And they immediately took it down because it happened to come from an independent cinematographer who took the video
Oh.
and didn't tell them that he actually didn't receive permission from the parental guardian of the child. And then
Right.
immediately they issued a retraction, apologized immensely, and fired the independent cinematographer
Of
for
course.
not receiving the signed consent.
Right. So it's not just as cut and dry that they, as they say, you know,
No.
there's no expectation of privacy in public. It's it's more nuanced than that. And I know that nuance is not something that these people understand.
Mm-mm.
The nuance is a whole foreign concept to them.
I mean, if you watch any newscast where they're talking anything about like obesity, and they show people walking down the street who are obese, they're only showing them from about the chest down.
Mm-hmm.
They're not showing their faces because that would be grounds for a lawsuit because
Right.
they're essentially having this conversation about obesity and then they're showing somebody that they deem to be obese.
Right.
And it's kind of that same
Insulting.
perspective.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't have a expectation of privacy in public, but you do kind of have a general expectation of you're not going to be used for commercial purposes.
Right.
And that's, you know, you sign up to be an extra on a film and you sign up and you sign a ton of waivers to do
Mhm.
it. And you end up in the film, or maybe you don't. And that's kind of the same idea. If you're expecting to make money off something, you have an expectation to get permission to do what you're doing.
Right. So, and some of these guys out there, I mean, their channels are at least as big or bigger than mine. I mean, they're making money.
Mm-hmm.
They're making lots of money and not respecting any of the people. Like, I go through great pains, especially when I'm making a video. You know, I take their videos and react to them and make them my own. And a lot of them, they're filming children.
I was about to say that.
And I go through great pains to block out the child's face. And a lot of them, they're telling the parents, "Oh, I'm not filming your child. Your child won't be filmed. And if, you know, he or she is, I'll blur it out." And of course, they're lying,
Mm-hmm.
as evidenced by the fact that when I look at the video on their channel, the kid's face is not blurred out. And I go through great pains to do that. And I've come up with a little mantra, like, you have to, if you're going to be a frauditor, you have to be willing to lie.
Oh yeah.
You know, just like they say,
Flat earthers.
I'm a journalist. I'm an independent journalist gathering content for a story. Well, that's just a lie, because none of them have ever produced the story. They just dump the video out there, dead air
editing,
and all.
Yeah.
Yeah, no editing, no nothing. You know, they just dump it on their channel, and some of them, you know, make a fair bit of money out of it.
Well, that's like the guy in Canada. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He was the one that is now in prison for like hate speech. Or was going to jail.
Johnston.
You know, the person yelling,
Yeah.
the girl saying, "I'm a minor," and
Yeah.
him
Right.
just
Oh
going
no,
off.
Marcel.
Yeah.
That's Marcel Bissett. Yeah.
Yeah, and just going off, and it's like there's certain laws surrounding that, particularly in private
he's in
establishments, as to
prison?
what you can and cannot do. And if they tell you you can't, you
No,
can't.
I think you're confusing him with the other Canadian, Kevin Johnston, who is in
Yeah,
prison.
he's
Kevin
in prison.
Johnston.
Okay. Yeah,
Mar-
but
Mar-
that was
Marcel-
Marcel.
Let's be honest, Marcel's going to be in prison soon enough,
Oh, yeah.
probably for something. He's a maniac. But yeah, the
His
girl
server's
said
crazy.
the girl said, "I'm a minor," and he was like, "I don't care." So when I made the video about his video, I had to, obstruct her face, because that's
disgusting.
what decent people do.
I bet they would do that if it was their own family, however, or someone they cared about.
I don't know. I think he's a sociopath. I don't think he
True,
cares.
true.
He's like way off the charts crazy.
Yeah, he has a lot of interesting beliefs. Although I still can't get over the time when he's like, I have a cold, and he's like out of breath walking up a slight incline, and it's like, dear God, man.
Would you believe that I got a terms of service strike for that? Because I produced a video of him saying that, and he said, I have pneumonia, but it's not, the word that we can't say.
Mm-hmm.
And I left that in because he only said it once. He said, I have a pneumonia, and it's not the C word. And I got a hit from YouTube saying that it was a terms of service strike for medical misinformation. And I said, I'm making fun of him for saying that because obviously that's what he has. And YouTube didn't care. They were just like, nope, it's a strike. Sorry.
Wasn't the original video still up?
The original video, yes.
Yeah.
And the one with Marcel, they gave me a terms of service strike, and the original video was still up. And the original video is still up. But eventually they took the strike away for the one about Marcel in the grocery store, screaming about the Nuremberg Code or whatever nonsense he was screaming about. But
I've seen a few comments of like in the chat of like, why doesn't YouTube just take it down? And I think a lot of it has to do with they're trying not to get involved in political, medical, social debates, and then there's money as a part of it,
right?
Because people are making money off it, they're making money off it, and they kind of go from there. And they don't have an incentive to necessarily take it down. And that's why they add that nice little warning plate. And I see it a lot of times on videos that you put out or that others put out about sovereign citizens being like, sovereign citizen movement warning.
Yes,
and it's a link to a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, that's below. Anytime I have sovereign citizen in the title, there's always going to be that warning below it. At this point, I think maybe we should do a few more. I think there's some more questions that you have, Cliff. I want to keep the audience involved. But Matt, we have 826 people currently watching. So well done. I mean, you're obviously a big draw. That's at the upper end of my live streams.
Mm-hmm.
How many people I have watching. It's usually right around 700 or so, but 826. So, thanks for being here and spending your time with us.
Yeah, no problem. There's definitely very few of us that I can probably count on one or two hands how many people actually study them in any capacity.
Yeah.
You should write an actual book.
My fiance keeps telling me I need to do that, and I'm sure I'm about to get a text message because she's watching going, see, I told you.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a very, and not enough people know about it, right?
No.
I think it'd be great for a book to be out there. Especially people from like England and stuff that I've spoken to, not all of them. They're like, they don't take sovereigns seriously because they just think of them as like an annoyance, but they're dangerous people.
Yeah, they're all over the world. That's
they
the
are.
Tough part. I found them I went to a conference in the UK, and I talked about the internationalization of it, and I brought up like billboards that were like legal name fraud, and somebody's like, yeah, I always wondered what that was, and it was like a PhD academic in the crowd having no idea what it was at a terrorism and social media conference.
Right.
But I've got to call you out because I don't think any guy has ever heard from his partner, I told you so. I don't believe you. That's never happened ever. You just made that up.
All right.
All right, Cliff.
All right. So keeping it criminal, member for 9 months, Debunkers says, Dr. Matt, did you do a JD or CJ at US all the way?
Huh?
Criminal justice, I'm assuming undergraduate is what he was referring to. I did a bachelor's in criminal justice, master's, and then PhD. generally you can do a JD then a PhD.
Mhm.
It's very fancy, but generally it's significantly cheaper to just do the PhD because it's usually funded by the university.
Oh, so I misspoke when I said that you're a psychologist.
Yeah.
Oh, I
That's
did
Told
fine.
you
not-
that. You never listen.
because when you talk, it's like Charlie Brown teacher. So, Matt, what is your PhD in? I'm sorry.
Criminology. It's
Criminology.
all in the
Okay.
same family. Criminology, sociology, and psychology are all kind of in the same social science family.
Right. Yeah, sort of like my master's is in management, and I took almost the identical classes that MBAs take. So yeah, pretty much same thing. Okay, sorry about that.
Go ahead, Cliff, but unmute yourself. It is you making that noise. So.
Okay. Ghost Diver 30, new member. Welcome to Tasers. Unclean Hands
Yay.
for $5 says, what would Andrew Sheets classify as, Dr. Matt?
I need to be reminded of who he is, honestly. The name doesn't specifically ring a bell for me.
Me either. I'm not sure. Michael Sheets. I could probably Google it real quick.
Andrew Sheets.
Or Andrew Sheets.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Okay. Bob Andrus for $5. No message. Thank you. Doug Donahue for $20 says, is there a correlation between abuse or bad law enforcement experience that pushes these people down this path? It's just hard to fathom as to why people think this way. Brainwashing is bad, okay?
Not that I've ever seen. But then again, I don't think there's been any research on First Amendment auditors, particularly like academic wise. For sovereign citizens, it's usually psychiatry related to, are they suffering from a mental illness that's causing them to be delusional, which 99% of the time they're not. If the evaluator is not familiar with the ideology, they will declare them incompetent. If they are familiar with it, they're like, no, this is just what these people think.
All right, it's like just intransigence. They just are they're just naysayers. Sort of like children that just say no, you.
Yes.
I don't know if we lost him for a second or
I don't know.
Nope, I'm still here. Sorry, I'm shifting around.
no.
No.
It's okay. It happens to all of us.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they especially auditors, I think, are more scammers, and I think the sovereign citizen on the far end of the sovereign citizens, I think they're true believers, because the First Amendment auditors sort of, they live their everyday life just like everybody else. It seems like, except they don't have jobs, but they can function. And some of the, like that one sovereign citizen, that Ernie, the mountain man looking guy.
Yeah,
Like
Ernie.
he can't even function as a human being because he's so deep down the rabbit hole in his beliefs.
A couple things though. Andrew Sheets is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and can you explain who Marcel Bissett is for some of the people in the chat?
Oh yeah, I can. I don't know if you know, Matt, who Marcel is.
I've seen the videos.
Yeah. So
and
yeah, he fancies himself, one of these people that's smarter than everybody else. Like he has cracked the code. He's got the answers, and he literally thinks that he's just better than everybody else, and that has led him to be a very, very condescending sovereign citizen. In my latest video about him, like I have several.
Non-lawyer.
Yeah, he's not a lawyer, but he thinks he's a legal expert, like most sovereign citizens do. In my former videos about him, he was calling around to the schools telling them that they owed him $1 million if they didn't, answer his questions. And then in the most recent one, he was kicked out of a grocery store because he wouldn't wear a mask. and then he went in and served them with notice that he was going to sue them based on the Nuremberg Code that has absolutely nothing to do with putting a mask on your face.
Mhm.
But he was convinced that it was, and he's one of those ones that he screams what he has to scream, and then he spikes the football because he is just convinced that he just crushed it. Like, he nailed it. Nothing else to say. Yeah, he's one of those.
Good. Oh, and he's insane. You did
Yeah,
mention,
you
he's
saying that-
violently insane. Been in 500 street fights and won every one. that kind of-
Yeah, he seems like a violent guy. He always says
Oh,
that he's
yeah.
not violent, but then he challenges everybody to fight.
And he goes off on them.
Right. And it doesn't matter, woman, child,
Mm-mm.
elderly person. He doesn't care. He's just indiscriminately screams at everybody.
Next super then.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Undefined reality, $5. No message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Simon Mitchner for £5 says, Dr. Matt, in the mindset of the average softset, if there even is such a thing, what do you think would be the reaction to Windows and a pink sub?
Mm.
He's
Come
not going to get
on.
that reference.
Oh no, I understand that reference
No.
completely. I actually, ironically, I usually listen to the Sunday live stream while I'm working the next day. I just have it
Okay.
playing on my second monitor, so I pick up on that. They
Oh, well.
would probably want to see it.
Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
then. I'm the cause of it.
What is the psychology of somebody that thinks that there would be
Oh, shut
Hey.
up.
a window on a military submarine that's supposed to be clandestine? What would drive someone to think that irrational thought?
Lack of knowledge of what a sonar is.
I'm leaving.
He just called you a dum-dum, by the way. I'm just going to translate that for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Well, I mean, wouldn't sonar go through the glass and it would then ping off all the things inside because it isn't solid?
Well, no, it's the light that would be emitting from it that would be probably the biggest problem.
Oh god, I couldn't imagine what animals would be attracted to that at 500 feet.
Yeah. So, sorry, Cliff. Next question.
Excuse me. Don't anybody else hide or unhide this Wesley guy? You're unhiding, and I'm hiding, and you're unhiding again. So stop.
Okay. Just Jen for $5 says, I want to know why the majority of these people are jobless, welfare, disability, etc. What came first, auditing or no life plan?
Probably the latter. That would be my guess. It's probably a combination of, as somebody said before, of experiences with law enforcement and experiences with, and generally you see this with sovereign citizens, is that it's a feeling of not going anywhere, not having a goal, or having some barrier that's in the way. And that would be, I think, more the perspective. But again, there hasn't been a lot of research on it. And honestly, interviewing all the First Amendment auditors would be fascinating to see what they would say. I would actually, that's a lot of what I want to do for research-wise, is actually go out and talk to sovereign citizens. Have them sit down with cops and have an open discussion and see what they talk about.
That's a good question.
Right.
When you were doing your dissertation, did you have occasion to interview like any of the people on this spectrum?
No, actually, after I had started, I found out that they were actually in the town that I grew up in. I was having a conversation with a local cop, and I was explaining what I was doing for my dissertation because he was the father of a friend of mine, and he was like, "Oh, I deal with them," and I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're squatting in a house down here." And he goes, "Every time we get a call out there, he goes, we know we just have to bring the sergeant and lieutenant straight from the station because they won't
Right.
talk to anybody else." And he's
Right.
like, "We just go with 3 or 4 officers plus the supervisors and just hash it out, and they're taking it through civil court." And he's like, that's all they can do.
Right.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Again, please stop timing out Keith Newton. He's not saying anything wrong, guys.
Yeah. Don't make me take wrenches away.
I think it's just, there's a lot of tension right now, and they're trying to help. I'm not looking at who's doing what. Just whoever is, please. It's okay, and I appreciate your help. But
We're all big boys and girls. We can take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Tony Casper for $9.99 says, has anyone noticed that a large percentage of frauditors have convictions for sexual assault, domestic violence, pedophilia, or CP?
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed that. I
That's
don't know
crazy.
if you've noticed, Matt.
Slightly. I actually lived in Houston, so I was always paying attention when it was PayPal Patty or News Now Houston to where they were going and who they were interacting with, because I was always curious if I worked with the individuals on film.
Right. The thing with that drives me insane is News Now Houston is one of the frauditors that all the other frauditors respect and they look up to. Like they'd love to go hang out with them and go do their silly audits with them. He's a convicted rapist. And he's on trial for molesting his daughters. PayPal Patty has a young daughter. And yet he still hangs out with this man, looks up to him, seeks advice from him. There's a video of him calling News Now Houston, asking for advice. And probably, they have, cookouts together or, their families intermingle or whatever it is. And he's got this daughter in the same vicinity as this man that he knows is convicted of rape and is now being prosecuted for child molestation of his own daughters. And he has his daughter in proximity to that man. I don't know. I can't even begin to understand how you get to that place in your head.
Well, aren't there accusations that Patty has been physically abusive to his wife, or at least videos that appear or sound as if that is what is occurring?
Yeah, I have them on my channel, and I would say it goes beyond just appear. I mean, he hasn't addressed them and said, oh, no, it's not that, it's this, but I don't know what else that could be other than if there was some rational explanation for it. I mean, I know I'd be like rushing to the microphone to say, oh, no, this is what that actually was. And he won't say anything about it. So what else could it be at this point? So, yeah, he's a horrible person. But, I mean, horrible people still typically, I mean, it's a biological imperative to take care of your offspring. But he seems to not have that evolutionary trait that he wants to take care of his child because he hangs out with a rapist.
I have to point out, Tones the Geek just said, jokes on PayPal Patty. News Now Houston will lose interest in him after he gets too old.
I've said that before. I've made comments. I was a jerk, and I've made comments before that on PayPal Patty's videos that said, watch out, you kind of look like a 12-year-old girl. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure they got me blocked, so they probably didn't see those anyway.
Okay. Pincalo the Driving Ape for Canadian $2 says, I just want to see one finished journalism project.
That's not going to be forthcoming now.
Yeah. Unchained America for $5 says, what clinical disorders have you discovered with Sovsits and First Amendment auditors? Narcissism is one of them.
Honestly, I would honestly think for both of them, but for sovereign citizens, the research that's been done by psychiatrists, they're 99% of the time, there is no mental illness present that could explain the kind of delusion. And if they're familiar with it, they immediately say, no, that's just a belief system, and that's what they think. There isn't a underlying psychiatric condition that they can identify.
Maybe we need a DSM-6.
We have a frauditor here.
Oh, do we?
Rogue Nation.
Oh, Rogue Nation. Oh,
the worst of them. No, not the worst of them. Just pathetic example of them.
Right. I'm surprised he's not in jail because, he's. I don't know how many times that guy's been arrested. More times than most of the rest of them. You would think that after he debated Artie and Artie just wiped the floor with him, he would just slink away. But
I know they never have that sense, that self-awareness.
they're not self-aware. Like, I'm sure that if you ask Eric Nation in the chat right now, what did he think of his debate with Artie? He'll tell
probably thought he
you,
won.
yeah, he nailed it.
Like flat earthers.
Right. Yeah. They'll totally lose a debate and then go back to the asylum and high five all their friends and claim victory. It's the same with like Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind has never won a debate ever, not once, but he thinks that he won all of them.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Tones the Geek for $10 says the First Amendment has survived 47 presidents, 117 Congresses, and both civil and world wars. Yet auditors think it's somehow not strong enough to survive postal workers telling them they can't film.
That's a good point.
All right. Keeping It Criminal says Andrew Sheets is a Florida cop watcher that holds an F the police sign and had a new Florida statute made about him. Yeah.
They're damaging their own causes,
Yeah,
anything.
It's definitely, in my opinion, Matt, what both of these groups are doing, because the First Amendment auditors are getting restrictions put on them by state and local laws, and the sovereign citizens are getting these paper terrorism laws made about them. So in my estimation,
keep going, guys.
Both groups are counterproductive to the goal that they say they want to achieve. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Particularly in the First Amendment auditors, that you are going to find that local ordinances will start popping up that will restrict that significantly, and it will take a massive, well-funded lawsuit to overturn them. And I just don't see a lot of First Amendment auditors having the finances and the funding to be able to put that together. Now, granted, you may see that if one of these local ordinances does pop up and it is in direct violation of the First Amendment, an agency like the ACLU will step in and will support them. But it has to be a legitimate claim. And I haven't seen the ACLU step in on any of this. And I would trust that they would most likely be the ones that would fight that kind of a lawsuit and that kind of a law. Because, I mean, they get involved in very minor things. Like, I know somebody I knew from college had a friend who got suspended from school for the T-shirt he was wearing.
Right.
And the ACLU stepped in and actually went after the school on his behalf locally in Massachusetts. And he ended up getting, ironically, a handwritten apology letter from the principal who suspended him. But it would take that kind of, that's when you know that a lot of times that there are restrictions, because you do see large organizations that make it their mission to protect those rights.
Right. I was wondering why I thought of the same thing you did, but we come from the same area. Gotcha. I was thinking the same thing with the boy in the T-shirt. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Kristen Dubler for $5 says Dr. Matt should start his own channel.
Yes.
And that would be my fiance. Telling you.
Is it?
I told you so.
I agree completely with her.
Right.
You are so right, girl.
Is it Dubler?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay.
Yeah, DEUBLER.
See, this is why I hired you, Cliff.
Yeah, I mean, if you started a channel, I mean,
we'd all support it.
Yeah, we would. You'd have over 1,000 subs.
Right. Yeah, you get your play button right away.
I've thought about it. It's one of those things that I've definitely considered. It's just that the content would be the big part of it. But I've had ideas on what could be done, particularly like turning long form research into short form podcast kind of things, is that you can actually get attention to legitimate research.
Yeah, there's plenty of doctors, lawyers, psychologists that have channels, and a lot of them are really successful.
Oh yeah.
You just have to be able to explain stuff. And from what I've seen so far, you're able to explain stuff in layman's terms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people want. They want to, look at the science channels.
Right.
That like Star Talk and Veritasium and all those channels that explain science topics in a way that an average person can understand them. I mean, there's some of them out there. Look at Vsauce. What does Vsauce have? Like 5 million subscribers.
And there's always going to be, like, no matter what you talk about, there are people who are interested in it, and this is a place to find them.
Yeah. So I would encourage you to start a channel.
The only thing I say when anybody's ever talking about that is there's a lot more work that goes into it than people realize.
That's true. Yeah.
That's probably the one kind of barrier that I've considered. That just full-time job plus I teach at a university on the side.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. So you're already.
If I can manage it, then anybody.
Excuse me. Oh yeah. What do you do it alone? No.
I did it alone until I hired you. Well, until I hired Dave, but once you get to a certain number of subscribers, yes, you're going to need help. But in the short term, it's just a learning process at the beginning. Like learning how to edit and all that's going to take a bit. I don't know if you have a Mac or a PC, but there's different applications you can use. But yeah, definitely start a channel and just talk about stuff you're interested in and see what the result is. So yeah, I agree with the fiance as well.
And you have people who would be very happy to help. Me.
I'll definitely consider it, because I know as soon as I get off here, she's going to be like, I told you.
Yeah.
Be planning it out in her head.
Well, you can message me. What was your name? Kirsten?
Yeah, Kristen.
Kristen, you can message me. I'll back you up.
Yeah, Tina's shopping for a different boss, apparently. Guess I'm not good enough, but
she just wants somebody who pays her on time.
Oh shit!
Oh, today is Sunday, isn't it? I'll pay you if you do it by Tuesday or whatever, Yeah, all right. Somebody that doesn't complain all the time, Cliff. What do you got?
Oh, wow.
All right. Mo Army 67, member for 7 months. He asked, "Hey Matt, do you have your own YouTube channel?" That was just asked. Thank you. Gary Boyd for Canadian $2 says, "How do they justify ignoring basic human dignity?"
Good question.
That I could not even get close to considering. Honestly, it's a very. I think it's that fundamental belief that you're right, and nothing will overshadow that until something significant happens. And that's generally what happens with sovereign citizens. Is they don't come out of it until there's a prison sentence that's rather lengthy, or they are completely, prevented from doing anything.
Well, even then, you got what's the young lady, the Moor, that's been in jail for like a year and a half.
Tracy?
Yeah,
Tracy Gale Bay, whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Tracy Gale Bay. She's been in jail for over like a year and a half, I think, waiting on trial, and she just keeps filing all these insane motions over and over.
No, she pled though. She's not there anymore. I think she pled and got out or something like that, right?
No. Well, I think she did finally do a plea, but I mean, it took over a year.
She got bounded or something out.
It was so terribly long
that
you would think a few months outside of the echo chamber would be enough to break.
Well, she was a guru too, though.
Right, but it's almost like Stockholm syndrome, that they're so deep into that belief system that it takes something like super significant to break them from it.
Well, you have to consider that when you're in prison, you're not so much disconnected, that the only communication you generally do have is with people who communicate directly to you. So likely receiving letters and correspondence from the people that support that viewpoint
Right.
and you're probably getting a lot more of that than what you would normally receive, and you're not kind of
Right.
getting the alternative. Especially in that case, they're likely pro se. They're
Mhm.
not interacting with an attorney who's actually
Uh-uh.
knowledgeable and giving them advice. Again, as Kick always puts it, not an attorney. I don't know anything about law. I have a cousin who calls me all the time about legal questions, and I start the conversation with, "I am not an attorney. 3 of our cousins are attorneys. Call them."
Yeah.
Right. And the thing about the law, like a lot of them, they talk about their rights, but never the responsibilities of the individual.
Right.
That gets me.
And they, I imagine that probably while they're in prison or jail, waiting trial, the people that from their particular social group is probably telling them things that are reinforcing
Mm-hmm.
what they believe. Like, oh, we filed this motion. This is definitely,
don't worry about it.
yeah. This one's definitely. We got all the magic words in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry. We got
We
this.
even made up some.
Yeah, we even made up some new words, and so yeah, I can see what you're saying about them not being as isolated as you would think they would be. But I mean, a year and a half in jail, like, waiting for a trial, and you just keep filing crazy motion after crazy motion. You would think at like the 13-month mark, you'd be like, I've been in here quite a long time. Like,
Yeah, I'd like to see my children before they grow up.
right. But,
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the last I read, a normal criminal court case will have about 50 to 70 filings, maybe
Cool.
around there, and that's just various lines on the docket of how many are included. A SovSit one can go as high as 80, 90, 100. It can be double, if not even more than that, because of those motions, and it takes, the judge has to respond to them.
right.
So
Yeah.
that further delays the process. If they don't even realize that they're extending that time out even further because of that case. And even in a case of somebody who's sitting in jail, particularly for a misdemeanor offense, you can generally lobby to have your bail reduced many times. I've seen it when I've in my job looking at court criminal records, and you'd see handwritten letters from people inside the local county jail requesting lower bail because they can't make the bail that's set. But it's unlikely that that's what they're filing, because they would have to be knowledgeable enough to know to ask for that.
And then at the same time, the sovereign citizens are putting liens on the judge, on the prosecutor, on the sheriff, on the cop that arrested them. They're leaning their house and all this stuff. And that's why these laws, like I said, it's counterproductive to what they want, because the laws are cracking down on what they're now calling paper terrorism.
And it's generally, right now, as far as I'm aware, there's very few states that actually have specific laws preventing going after unlawful or illicit liens, at least criminally. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head is at the federal level. And that's only if you go after federal judges, federal law enforcement, court staff. That's why, actually, if you buy a house, the best advice I ever got was make sure your house comes with a Homestead Act, because that protects you from unlawful liens when you go to sell it. And generally, it's like $250,000 is what it can protect you over, because it can cost tens of thousands to get a lien removed, because you have to prove it's false. And that's the hard part, because we've developed a country that's so easy to file a lien on property that all you need to do is essentially you fill out the paperwork correctly, you pay the filing fee, there's a lien on that property no matter whether it's legal or not, and it takes the owner to actually take it off.
It seems like we've made it in a lot of different areas too easy for the bad guys to win.
Yeah, and people don't know this, so they're amazed when they find out, oh, somebody filed a lien. Okay, they think they can call an 800 number and be like, no, this is nonsense, and somebody will punch a few buttons and fix it. But it really is. There's a lot more to it than that. But even judges. Like, I saw a story about a judge that some Moors had put a lien on his house, and he was trying to sell his house. He was about to retire and was, going to sell his house. They were going to move. And he's a judge and couldn't get the lien removed. Had to jump through all the hoops. So
and generally, you don't even know about it. There is no legal requirement for you to be notified when a lien is placed on any property or assets you own.
Right. I mean, there could be a lien on my house right now, and I probably wouldn't know about it. And I just said that, and now all the sovereign citizens are putting liens on my house right now.
Homestead Act, do it tomorrow. Make sure it generally was in your mortgage paperwork if you did it. But I remember that being something that I got advised to make sure if you bought a house, it was always in there just in case.
Yeah. Oh, I bought my house in like 1999. So
I am definitely not looking up how to file a lien.
oh yeah, just leave my
Yeah,
house.
for all that back pay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll pay you Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that.
Hey, bitch.
All right.
So
On to super chats.
Mm-hmm.
Stringfellow Hawk for $5 says, Dr. Matt, what do you think it would take for the sovereign citizen movement to end?
Ooh, that's a tough one, purely because the posse comitatus died out, particularly because the leadership died out. That was a big factor in it. And the fact that there weren't people peddling the ideas again and again and again because the leaders were gone. So nobody was selling for the posse comitatus. They sold like county level charters to groups.
Mm-hmm.
And when the leadership died out, nobody was selling charters. Therefore, nobody was cashing in, and therefore they died out. But I honestly, considering that now they've been going rather strong for the last, at least you're talking the last 13 years. And that's going strong since they first really ballooned in 2008. And there's very few estimates on how many there actually are. The only one I've ever seen was from a journalist, JJ McNabb, who chronicled them. And she said she guessed there was about 300,000 in the United States, about 100,000 hardcore and 200,000 that were just kind of testing the waters.
Yeah, I know that name.
and
Shoot, sorry. Damn it.
I don't think there's ever going to be an end to people that are susceptible to these type of scams. If it's not sovereign citizens, it's going to be something else, because it's always been something. There's always been cults, and there's always, I think, going to be cults. And I don't know, Dr. Matt, if you're aware of the bite model.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Oh yeah, I use that on the Moors.
Yeah, the bite model is something that lets you know, like in a particular group, are they a cult? It's
behavior, emotional.
Yeah. Okay. That does ring a bell.
Right. Because I know we did the bite model one time on a live stream for flat earthers, and they met like something like 80% of the criteria for what is a cult. And I think sovereign citizens is probably a little more towards 100% than the 80 that we got with the flat earthers. But they're isolated from their family members and people that aren't inside the group. They have certain things, and this is with the Moors, especially even more, like the way that they dress, the way they act, what they eat, when they sleep, when they wake up, where they go, things like that. That's all in this bite model, and I can look it up and shoot you a link to what all the criteria is. But I know with flat earthers, they hit most of all of it. And
I would think Moors probably hit.
Oh yeah,
Moors would hit more than generic sovereign citizens because they're more likely to collaborate, and we kind of see that in Massachusetts right now with Jamal's court case, and the collective arrives to support them in court, and I think that would be more likely what you'd see. You don't see that too often you don't see a group of sovereign citizens behind the guy fighting his parking ticket. Very rarely.
Yeah, and I've seen, they were even like screaming mantras when they were on the side of the road. Jamal was saying, if they ask you this, what do you say? And they would all scream, Jamal. Ask Jamal. And he was like, if they ask you for your license, what do you say? Ask Jamal. And like that's some cult like stuff in my opinion. Yeah.
He thought he wants so badly to be a leader.
Yeah, he
You
wants
know,
he
the
wants
military leader. He wants to be thought of as a brilliant military mind.
yeah.
He's not.
Yeah, he wants to be the next what was the one guy that started the whole Moore thing?
Noble Drew Ali.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. He wants to be the descendant of that guy, and I think he's just going to end up in prison.
It was one of my first videos, so it's not great, but yeah, it's I take a bite. Marble Girl takes a bite out of the Moors because I used the bite model to get it. Anyways, so yeah, they did. They were high up on every single one of them.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for them because they definitely are much more of a collective than general sovereign citizens. You'll find it that they group, but not as often.
Yeah.
Right. And the Moors,
belonging.
they have a hierarchy, sort of a rank structure.
Well, they try to like, you have what is it, Tajiri Light, whatever her name?
Light to Jerry Bay.
Whatever, I can't remember her name. There's so many of them, and like you said earlier, with the gurus for the soft sit world, how they're surprisingly collaborative. The Moors were starting to too, and you only see them start arguing with each other if they think one is getting too much power, and they don't want that person to be. You know, like they want to be.
The only really like argumentative interaction, at least formally through websites and kind of what I was able to collect, were two gurus that were going back and forth sharing emails that they had with one another. And I think it was because one stole the other one's like novel idea, novel interpretation. But it was very short-lived. It was like 3 or 4 emails and that was it. And it was only between two different websites. And ironically, one kept bringing up the Magna Carta, so I have a feeling it was something to that route. Pretty sure the website had something like 1215 in it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they like. I was just gonna say they do seem to back each other up a lot. That's all.
Before we get too much further along, I meant to do this earlier, like at the beginning. I wanted to give an OPT lawyer update.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally blanked on it at the beginning. So for everybody who is concerned with OPT, as we all are, he did come home from the hospital just a few days ago, and about a day and a half later went back in with pneumonia.
Again.
So so he is currently back in the hospital, having spent something like a day and a half at home. And I have permission from him to tell everybody because everybody wants to know. So,
but as far as he knows, there's no blockage anymore, so that's good, right?
Right. It's good and bad. I mean, the guy's on a roller coaster. And we're all beside ourselves with worry. Who we don't know what to think because he's in some aspects he's getting better, but in some aspects he's not. So I'm just putting out the fact that because people have been asking, I get a lot of messages saying, hey, what's up with OPT? Is he back at home? Is he not? So he did go back home and now he's back in the hospital, this time with pneumonia for I think like the 4th time. So just so everybody's aware.
But he's fighting still.
He is, and fuck
That's
cancer.
What matters. Fuck cancer and
fuck cancer. Yeah. So
moving
on. Sorry, Matt. That's somebody that's really close to us. And
I'm aware. I follow OPT
as
well.
Okay.
You keep thinking he's new or something. He's not.
I know, but I don't know what he does and doesn't know. So I just assume that he doesn't know and he can correct me.
Yeah, he's pretty smart. He'll ask questions. I was joking. Get it? Pretty smart. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a dumb guy.
Hard row. Okay, go ahead, Clippy. Super chat.
All right. Let's see here. Get back to the top. Okay, Robert Legier III for $5. Dr. Fauci used U.S. tax money to fund dog torture experiments in Tunisia. Arrest this man, for fuck's sake. He's a mad scientist breaking laws all over the place.
Oh god.
That's so far off topic.
Thank you.
I know,
But no politics. Go ahead.
All right, Michael Palmieri for $10 says, Dr. Sweeney, can you talk more about how the SCM's content drive differential cliques in their hyperlink network?
I know what was the name on that one?
Michael Palmieri.
Yeah, he was actually my old, we shared an office at my university. We're working on a project where we're actually looking at how the websites interacted with each other and what that meant for the ideology and the content. And it was interesting because ideology really didn't, if I can remember correctly, it's been a while. I'm sorry, Mike, I haven't looked at the revisions yet. I need to do that, I know. But a lot of it came down to there really weren't a lot of connections as far as ideology and like tactics went between them. The big thing that I can remember, at least from my dissertation, more focused on that a lot of times they don't suggest outright illegal things. It's all about legal interpretation, which isn't the biggest. It's not a problem for a lot of authorities because that's kind of your right to debate what a law means and what it looks like. And what Mike and I did was to particularly look to see were there specific cliques that developed within these websites. Did they kind of segregate off and kind of have that reciprocal relationship between them, that they shared beliefs across those interactions? And they didn't really as much, which was very interesting because you would think that the websites that interact with each other would be more likely to support the same viewpoint. Particularly, there's two that I can remember that it's Anna von Reitz and Paul Stramer. Paul pretty much just mimics Anna von Reitz's documents on his website. It's essentially just a secondary repository. And that's a big thing with it, is that most likely they're kind of coming up with their own stuff, but they generally link to one another in order to justify those beliefs. And I think you'd probably say the same thing in kind of that the flat Earth community. They're using each other's ideas and arguments and quote unquote evidence to support that viewpoint because this other person shows the same thing that they believe in.
Yeah, and I've noticed that with the that even in my video today, the lady was parroting things that she had heard without even bothering to check and see if it was true. Like when she said obstruction is only a physical act. Well, no, it's not. Like it took me 5 seconds to Google obstruction of justice and get from Cornell Law School, the definition of obstruction of justice, and it's anything that hinders an investigation or a court process, but they just repeat it from each other. But one thing I wanted to just so the audience is aware, Anna von Reitz is a lady. She's a sovereign citizen guru who claims she claims to be a judge in Alaska. I've looked myself and I can't find. You can look up who's a judge in Alaska. It's pretty simple. She's not on the list. So when you ask people that say she's a judge, they say, well, it's a secret court, some super secret court. Well, if she's a judge in a super secret court, then why is she on YouTube saying she's a judge
for a super secret court?
Right. I don't think there's a whole lot of CIA, super deep cover, agents that have YouTube channels saying I'm a super deep cover, secret agent for the CIA. And then that doesn't happen. So obviously she's a charlatan, but she has so many people that, I've gotten emails from them just raging at me for saying she's not a judge. And they're like, she's a judge. I know she's a judge. And I'm like, okay, what court? Like where's her courtroom? Where are her chambers? And show me a decision that she's made in writing, because every decision that a court makes is published somewhere.
Mhm.
I mean, even the Supreme Court, you can look up their decisions.
Reduced to writing. That's what it's called. Reduced to writing.
Right. Show me a trial that she's presided over, and they can't do it. The only thing I get back is hate and vitriol.
I mean, there's only there's only one formal secret court in the United States, and that would be a FISA court.
FISA court, yeah.
A Foreign Intelligence
Surveillance Act.
Surveillance Act court. And that's purely because of what it intends. And then the other would be a grand jury, of which the grand jury outcome is public. What occurs within it is not public. But those are the only two types of courts that I can think of that would actually have some kind of hidden use, or that's hidden for a particular reason.
And even those are only classified for a certain amount of time, and then they're declassified. I mean, I think the longest that the U.S. classifies anything is something like 50 years. And then it's, I mean, I'm sure there's some things that are just classified forever, but typically that's the maximum amount of time that something's classified. Like when I left JSOC, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which meant that I wouldn't say anything that I saw or said or wrote or heard when I was working at JSOC, and that was for 50 years. So if I were to live long enough that I got past the 50-year mark, I could tell you everything in the world that I saw at JSOC, and they can't come shoot me in the face.
Okay. So Amy for $5 says, Matt, what percentage of these guys would you say have an actual mental illness versus the ones that just have a wicked case of being a dingleberry?
It's probably very low. Due to the complexity of most sovereign beliefs, I don't think somebody who has a particular delusion would necessarily comprehend the complete ideas of the sovereign citizen movement. Because it generally seems like, at least I'm not a medical doctor, I don't know a lot about psychiatry, but it seems to be that when you have a delusion, you have a very specific delusion.
Mhm.
My grandmother, when she was in a nursing home, believed that men in black suits were coming to kill her, and she was hyper focused on that. She was actually at a Catholic nursing home, so the men in black suits were all priests. And a lot of times she would see them coming and giving last rites, and that's what she was associating with. They were coming to kill her. But that hyper focus and that delusion is generally very specific. And I think the broad perspective of sovereigns would not be conducive to specific delusions.
Okay. Judy got this for $4.99. Says, do you think legislation is necessary? And if so, does it need to be federal, state, or local level to get started?
Depending on what it would, if you were to focus on liens, state level.
Yes.
Generally, for that would be the big step. Federal already has it, but state level does not generally.
Yeah, that would be my answer as well. Like the states need to crack down on some of this stuff because, I mean, honestly, my big problem with especially First Amendment auditors is they target like the 60-year-old lady that works at City Hall.
Yep.
And that's our moms and grandmas. Like, and they want to go in there, and it's just distasteful, and it's harassment. It's like my mantra is First Amendment auditors are unemployed people who harass employed people so that stupid people will give them money. And that's, I think, as accurate as any description that you could give about what a First Amendment auditor is. But the sad fact is that these employed people are usually frontline workers in police stations, city halls, and they're a lot of times are grandmas. And that's infuriates me. And we should protect as a society the most vulnerable people in our community. and that is these groups.
Yeah. And you'd also have the example of, the call centers from Calcutta calling and the refund scams and that kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot in that is kind of very similar in that they're going after specific people because it's much easier to target them. And I think sovereign citizens are the same way. They're targeting people who are struggling in some way, particularly gurus, and they're trying to find them a quick out.
Yeah. Oh, I lost my thought. I had a thought and then it went away. Damn it. Cliff, what do you got?
Okay. We got Swamp Pirate for $2 says hashtag Keith Lives Matter. Charlie Girl 87 for $2 says Galveston here and we all hate him. I think she's talking of News Now, Houston.
Oh yeah. I can't wait for his trial to start because the guy. I mean, I saw his interrogation. I mean, it was released on YouTube. I don't know if you saw it, Matt, but his interrogation by the police. I'd be amazed if he didn't actually do it.
Now I have a video to look up tomorrow because I definitely wanted to see that. I was always paying attention when I was out and about in Houston and I lived there, particularly for them. It was like the video you put out of, Patty running away from the brand new First Amendment auditor got arrested.
Yes.
At like municipal center. And I was just watching it going like that's actually something they do in Houston, which is the DA is heavily involved in every arrest. They have to make a phone call to the assistant district attorney to make sure that they are willing to accept the charge before they bring them in.
Right.
And that's why that guy, the deputy constable left, was on the phone, came back, and then arrested them because he got approval from the DA to take them into custody for trespassing.
Well, there was the his interrogation by I don't know if it was state police or local police. I'm not sure, but he was in the interrogation room and they were talking to him, and one of the interrogators said, we talked to your ex-wife and we said that you're being investigated for molesting your daughter, one of them. And she said, well, that's not surprising. He molested all my daughters. And so to me, I think this guy needs to be taken off the streets. Hopefully it's pretty bad. And the way that all of the other First Amendment auditors have this hero worship of them just says a lot about their character.
Yeah. Brand of Ham 94 for $5 says PayPal Patty and his mom are still filing false copyright strikes on other watchdog channels. Any advice?
Oh, was that for me? I'm sorry. Read it again.
PayPal Patty and his mom are still filing false copyright strikes on other watchdog channels. Any advice?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I've sent other people the wording that I use when I get a strike.
Who's it from?
Yeah,
Seriously,
that's a good question.
Because sometimes it's not. Yeah, who's it from?
That was Brand of Ham 94.
Because you want to check and make sure you have fair use in there.
Well, yeah, that's
agree,
step
right,
one.
Schrodinger?
Yeah, that's step one. You got to make sure that it's actually fair use. And it's funny because my premiere that came out earlier today, there was somebody in the chat saying that I got a copyright strike today. And I think that he needs to let YouTube know because YouTube doesn't seem to know.
I didn't know. You didn't know. YouTube didn't know.
Yeah, YouTube doesn't know that I got a copyright strike today. So whoever you are, silly little troll, tell YouTube about this copyright strike that you did because it hasn't been applied to my channel.
Apparently, I was in the chat today, but I didn't know it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there was a Marvel girl there, but not a Marvel girl.
Oh, well, yeah,
It
happens. Yeah. So the question was about copyright strikes. Yeah. So I have everybody knows that I've probably have a record number of copyright strikes on my channel. Like, they just come out of the woodwork, copyright striking me left and right. And I have honed my response down to a sharp-edged blade that I send back, and I've never lost. I lost the very first copyright strike.
didn't fight that one, though. To be fair.
Yeah, I didn't fight it because I didn't know how, because it's my very first one. Since then, I've probably gotten a dozen or more, and I've won all of them. And it's just, you got to word it properly. You have to let them know that you transformed the work, that no reasonable person could look at your video and mistake it for the original, and that you consider it fair use. And it doesn't hurt to say the original video was 8 minutes, and
anything you edited out.
Yeah, I used 6 minutes of it, and I added 4 minutes of commentary.
Right.
That's the ingredients to a good response to a copyright strike. But step one,
mention if the original's still up.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt as well. Well, that's good for a terms of service strike.
Well,
not so much for a copyright strike.
Yeah, you're right. My bad.
Yeah. So, but step one is make sure that you didn't actually, do a copyright. I mean, if you're just re-uploading somebody's video, then if you get a strike, then sorry, that's on you. But you have to transform it and make it your own product that can't be mistaken for the original. I think,
and make sure it's simple enough a computer can read it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that too, because AI is running the vast majority of this stuff. Humans aren't looking at a lot of that from YouTube.
Yeah, try to make sure you get human eyes on it. Make a person watch your video, because, like they said, the AI is going to pick up things stupidly. They don't have finesse. I don't know what to say.
I mean, that's a big thing in almost anything that you do with a large company, even standardized testing. I joked to people that I was like, I took the GRE and got almost a perfect score on the writing. I was not a great writer, but I just knew to regurgitate the prompt back to it. It didn't matter how well I wrote it. It mattered that I reiterated the prompt and focused on keywords. And that's probably what YouTube is doing as well, is using the same system.
Yeah, I remember when they used to train us for standardized testing, and they did stuff like that.
All right. Keeping it criminal for $5 says, Dr. Matt, do you believe that the Morozov's First Amendment auditors emulate MLM or pyramid schemes with their monetary attempts?
That's tough, because generally, so in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. There is somebody at the top who is making money by filtering it down and getting you to get more people involved. That is part of a multi-level marketing scam. The more people you get involved, the more money the person makes. But there's not that pyramid structure to it that you could conceivably say it's a pyramid scheme, and that the person who is brought in and then they bring in 3 more, they're generally, that person, the middleman, is not getting paid for the most part.
Excuse me. What about the fact that they'll rise up in the ranks? They see that as some sort of payment?
So it could be if say, for example, say, just taking a different example, Anna von Reitz gets Schrodinger and I involved, and then we start paying her for her toolkits, and then she enables us to then sell her toolkits, and we get 5, 6, 7 more people involved, but we have to give her a percentage of each one. We don't have direct control over the content or their structure, but she's getting money from everybody else. Generally, with a multi-level marketing, once it runs out of money, it fails. And it requires you to continue bringing more people in to continue to get paid. So you could make that argument. It's a little bit more, I think a MLM is a little bit more, honestly, it's probably even creepier than just a selling a toolkit on the internet. It's actually trying to get you to get your friends and family involved in things.
And there's in both cases, though, it's a no-win situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're not going to make, a ton of money off an MLM unless you get in at the very beginning.
Right.
And you're same thing with sovereigns. You're not really gonna, unless you do something novel, you're not gonna have
Right.
people running to you. There's probably on two hands you can count the number of gurus that are well known globally.
Right.
David Windmiller is one. He did a whole speaking tour through Australia, and he's the
Really?
reason that I was on a ABC radio, did a whole segment on sovereigns in Australia, and had me as a sovereign expert from the US, and then Daniel Baldino, who's become one for Australia, talk about that. And it was actually, they specifically brought up David Windmiller because he did a speaking tour throughout Australia, and all of a sudden they started popping up with the same language, and then the pandemic kind of exacerbated the situation there, especially.
It seems to me like the pandemic has had the same effect with First Amendment auditors, because now there's so much free time that people have. And
Free time.
and now they have this other thing that they can go into places and say, no, I'm not going to wear a mask.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
it just gives them one more thing to rail against. Like, so when they go to City Hall to do their public records requests, in air quotes,
Mhm.
and they're like, no, you have to wear a mask to come in here. And they're like, well, is that a law? And they're like, well, it's the governor's mandate. And they're like, mandates aren't laws. So it's just giving them more ammo, to do what I call doing a dumb. And so I think it's made it worse instead of better. You would think that the pandemic came along and they would all have to go away for a while, but it's just given them more stuff to rail against.
Well, it's the conspiracy focus behind it, as you've seen via Super Chat, that it's exacerbated people who are already prone to
Mhm.
questioning the kind of status quo and going from there. And it's kind of exacerbated that situation.
Well,
Yeah,
what
but-
is it with the conspiracy mindset? Is it just like just a general distrust of authority, or of conformity, or is it, what makes somebody a conspiracy theorist? Because if I'm going to say something is not the case, I need evidence before I say it's not the case. The conspiracy theorists will just from the jump say, it's not the case because they said it's the case.
Like,
And-
are you asking if it's organic? Like, some of them are born. What
just
was it?
contrarians.
Yeah.
They just say, well, they said it, whoever they is.
Mhm.
And if they said it, then it's from Satan. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry, I just noticed my camera zoomed way in, so I'm trying to fix that.
It did. I
yeah,
think you have a deviated septum in your left nostril, just by the
Oh
way.
my god.
I don't know why that did that. That was weird. But I think you're definitely right. I think a lot of it comes down to people are focused on it's just questioning it. It's the idea that if and it can be generally a good thing in a room full of people who all agree with each other to have somebody who fundamentally disagrees. The devil's advocate perspective.
Right.
And I think people take that to an extreme that ultimately they don't believe. There we go, fixed it. People don't want to believe that it's accurate, so they want to find an alternative perspective on a particular thing. And I think that's where it comes down to, is that people are always they're essentially kind of, and a good example is playing devil's advocate to the extreme.
Right. And how much of it is what I call being in the they just want to be in the secret knowledge club. They want to feel special. Like, I have this insight that nobody else has.
They're
like
flat earthers.
Yeah, like the guy there's a guy on YouTube, he calls himself targeted citizen or
Ugh.
something like that. And no matter what car drives down the street, no matter what aircraft flies over his house, no matter what happens in his life, it's they. If a car drives down his street, it's they. If a plane flies over, a helicopter flies over, it's they.
They're doing it again.
You know, they're all looking at him. They're shooting radio waves into his house. If he's got a headache, they caused it.
Even the birds.
Right. Oh yeah. The birds are actually robots. They're, cameras. How much of it do you think is that mentality that you're so important that the government writ large is after you? Like they want to know everything you do.
Yeah, I think in that example, that's where you're definitely talking about that like delusion level. And that's what I meant by like the sovereign ideology is so vast that to actually keep it straight can take a lot of effort. However, somebody like that it's they're doing this, they've done it, and that's that hyper focus and that delusion is that there is this large scale conspiracy that's targeting them for some reason.
Right.
And actually being able to figure out why is part of the delusion in particular. I think a lot of it comes down to, in particular, that it's finding that secret knowledge. You've found a way around this. You found a way that nobody else has thought of before. You've developed this massive knowledge base that goes against what everybody else thinks. And that really what becomes kind of central to a lot of new kind of solve sets is that they come out with this stuff and they find a new reinterpretation of some old paradigm. The irony that the posse comitatus, that's kind of the original sovereign citizens, were Christian identitarians,
right?
Who have the most fundamental misunderstanding of Christianity in any sense of the word. You get down that route and you're horrified. And I've done research on that perspective as well. And yet you see somebody like the Moors picking up certain pieces of it because it fits that viewpoint of being unique, being indigenous, or being Moroccan, and they're actually the ones that are in control. And that's where you get that feeling of superiority.
And they talk about Islam, but they're not Muslim.
Right.
At
least, they are. Some are.
Yeah, but like Devon Bay, he says Islam, all the time. He talks about Islam and all that, but he smokes weed, which is not, something that a practicing Muslim would do.
Okay.
So
no drugs, no alcohol, no tobacco.
Right.
And a central component.
Right. And he smokes cigarettes. But it's funny, the guy that I was just talking about, the targeted citizen, whatever his channel name is, he's so deep down this rabbit hole that he's building a houseboat so that he can moor it like in the middle of this lake so that there are no streets to drive by. This is a guy, Vilified Freedom.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they can still fly the drones over, but
okay.
And he has a young son.
No.
Who he drags around and talks about all this nonsense with, and he's going to take him on the houseboat in the middle of this lake and not send him to school and not do. She comes and goes. From what I was able to tell, like every now and then she'll just get sick of his nonsense and go stay with her family for a while. But that's how much he believes this. I mean, he seems to really believe that the government is watching him, and he's nobody of any consequence. Like,
when you ask them why, they never answer. Like, why would the government be after you? But that's got to be partly organic, at least partly organic. It can't just be contrarianism or whatever.
No, I suspect that he's mentally ill because if you're going so far as to, make a houseboat, put it in the middle of a lake so that there's no street for to drive down, and you're pulling your child out of school because you don't want them teaching him anything. And you think that they're shooting. That's another reason he wants to go out in the middle lake, is because it's too far for them to shoot the radio waves at him.
Oh God.
It's
You know,
pretty
so
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was somebody just posted in the chat. I can't find it now, but it was that Noble Drew Ali had bastardized both Islam and Christianity, which is any extreme element of any religion is interpreting something in a ridiculous fashion. Take the guy who shot up Austin, Texas in 2014. I think it was Larry Steve McWilliams. He was a Phineas priest, which if you want to go down a hell of a rabbit hole, that's one to go down. It takes one section of one chapter of one book of the Bible and turns it into an extremist movement.
Oh wow.
And that's what they do. That's a lot of times what you see in these kind of groups, is that they take something very small, reinterpret it in a specific way, and push it out in a way that it is acceptable or digestible to at least a subset of people.
Right. And we talked about that earlier with cherry picking. So we've been going 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Get out.
Yeah, no, it says right up in the top corner there, 2 hours and 5 minutes.
It does.
So
we still have everybody with us.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're having a good time. I mean, we still have a good crowd watching, but do we want to do super chats and everybody in the audience? I'm sure you have questions, and they don't have to be super chats. Just at either AMG or Cliff, and we'll get them in. So, I mean, we have a rare opportunity to have somebody at our midst that's not just me, just shooting from the hip with my, silly little brain.
Yeah, for once I'm gonna say you can at me, bro.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a lot of times we'll have my friend PhD Tony on here, who's a geophysicist, and he maintains that only people with doctorate degrees are real people. So it's nice to have
a real person.
A real person on. So if y'all have questions and you want to ask a real person, we have one here. So Cliff?
Go ahead, Cliffy.
Yeah.
I'll get the non-supers. At me for non-super questions.
William Bilbrey for $9.99 says, "You guys have to get Vilified Freedom in one of these live chats. That guy's hilarious. Thanks for recommending him, Schrodinger's cat."
And he has been invited. He knows he's always welcome, but he likes his Sundays to his own. He's,
Yeah, no, he's been on before. Yeah,
yeah.
He's been on before with us. I love that guy.
Yeah, we all do.
Love to go hunting with him sometime. I'm sure he likes to go hunting.
Okay, Judy, you got this for.
Sorry, I was gonna say you rednecks, man.
For $4.99. Says, Dr. Matt, do you know Chris Pyle? He was my prof in college.
I saw that when he originally asked it. I looked him up. I do not, but it seems like he does a lot of civil liberties type research. But generally, actually, I went to school very close to the university he was at, but I did not know him, unfortunately.
Okay. I'll do we'll do like a couple of you.
That's what I was thinking.
A non-super.
Okay.
Yeah, two supers, one non-super.
Yeah.
Let's just do it that way, I think.
Okay. You want me to do one now?
Yeah.
Well, this was added to Cliff, but I'll ask it because I don't think it's a super. From Morgayu, could you please ask, that's what I'm doing, what kind of influence Christian nationalists are making in the South Sit and extremist movement? Thank you, Morgayu.
It's generally interesting. There's really no there's definitions of extremism, but there's no real across the board ability to determine what is extreme. People have tried, particularly with political parties, and a lot of it just comes down to extreme is essentially anything that differs beyond what would be considered the normal politics of a society, whatever that may be. So what is extreme to us in the United States may not be extreme in the UK or Scotland or Germany, but what is extreme there may not be extreme here. It varies dramatically. I think a lot of it has to do with how they fundamentally interpret that country or that country's laws in some way.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Okay.
brother.
The Bio Explorer for $5 says, is creating their own reality seems a commonality between auditors, Sovset, QAnons, Trumpists, etc. And is this exploding?
Yeah, it's definitely they create their own sub-society, essentially. That's kind of when you think of all the videos you see of sovereign citizens, I'm in my vessel, I'm in my private property, which ironically my fiance actually saw one, somebody with a Sovsit style vehicle nearby here.
Wow.
And she called and told me, and I was like, you stay the hell away from that car. They do not have insurance, they have nothing, and we will be screwed. I was
Right.
like, you stay the hell away from that car.
Smart.
And we've never seen it again. But it was like a white pickup that had, not for hire, non-commercial written all over it. And unfortunately, we have a dash camera, but it overwrote before we thought about pulling out the footage of her driving by it on the road. And it was in the middle of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, like in the middle of the city. And she's like, I wonder why we haven't seen him. Like, because it's probably in an impound lot somewhere.
Right. And that's a good point. Everybody, if you don't have a dash cam, get a dash cam.
Yep.
I'm gonna.
The only thing it can do is good for you. They're super cheap nowadays. Get one. I love mine. But I do want to ask really quickly, sorry for interrupting the questions, but what do you make of the whole QAnon movement? Is
Ooh.
that
Dear
is-
God.
Yeah, I know.
Ow, don't make me laugh.
It seems so silly.
It's in some cases it depends. I actually got in a massive, and I hate saying this because I was like, it was on Facebook.
Mhm.
It was hashtag save the children, and
Okay.
that was directly attributed to QAnon. And that was part of their thing. And I posted it on Facebook. I was like, just for my friends that don't realize, because my boss, who was not a QAnon supporter whatsoever, had no idea where it originated. And we were talking about something about juvenile justice. And she just went like, she just said it in a meeting, hashtag save the children. And me and one other coworker burst out laughing. And I was like, do you know where that comes from? And she was like, no. And we explained it. She goes, won't use that again. And I posted it being like, a lot of people don't know this stuff. It's
Right.
like, this is actually attributed to it. And that's that rabbit hole. You get stuck in that rabbit hole if you're looking up one thing, debt relief. I need to go on a debt management program. I have too much credit card debt. I need help. And you find that one website that says they can get you out of everything. Just got to file this paperwork correctly. And I think QAnon is very similar in that you find that. And it's people trying to find...
It's a lifeline.
Yeah, it's a lifeline, and then it's people trying to find meaning to something they may not understand.
Right.
And you see that a lot, and that was obviously very political driven and very much driven by 4chan and 8chan. And if you haven't seen it, there's a documentary, I think it's on HBO, that was actually really good, and they interviewed a lot of the people who created 4chan, created 8chan, and talked about that kind of the evolution of it. And a lot of it's kind of the idea that everybody is trying to predict the end of the world when it comes to these like large scale cults. But in reality, they're just saying things that are just they're unique, but they're also so close to what is actually happening in the world that it's close enough that if they just get one thing right, anybody will believe it. And that was a lot of QAnon, was a lot of the coded language came out, and some of it was right, some of it was wrong. But the stuff that was right got latched onto, and it was very simple things like the color of a tie, or there'll be an announcement tomorrow. And it's like, of course there's an announcement tomorrow. The press secretary meets with the press every day.
Right.
Like, and that's what comes out, and you latch on to certain words and pieces. QAnon's not a hole that I want to dive deeply down, because Sovereign Citizens is deep enough, and trying to figure out two completely different conspiracy theories, I think, would drive me insane.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is like the Tennessee sharpshooter fallacy, where you shoot, and wherever it hits, then you draw the bullseye around it. Like, look, I was right. And everybody counts the hits, but doesn't see the misses. And
Yep.
there could be one hit and 5 misses, and you're like, look, they were right, like right there.
Yeah, and that's the Sav Sid idea too. You
Yeah.
win one court case because a judge got pissed off enough and was like, "It's lunchtime, get out,"
Right.
and that's a win.
And another thing is that once they look into it and be like, yeah, these are the guys, you know, they got the right answer, no matter what happens after that, they're not going to admit that they were wrong. You know, some people just can't admit that they're wrong. So they just dig deeper. And no matter how many fails there are, they're never going to admit that they're wrong. So they just become more and more and more fervent in their beliefs.
Yeah, a lot of like QAnon that as it started to somewhat collapse, it's reformed under different kind of the next stage of it. Like there was a lot that came down to, okay, well, it will be on, you know, Donald Trump will win the presidency. Then, according to the Electoral College, he doesn't win because I'm not getting involved in that debate whatsoever. And according to him, he doesn't win. Okay, it'll be this date in January.
Yes.
Because this was this date. That date comes and goes. It goes as constitutionally planned. Then it's now this date. Then push forward and forward and forward and forward until eventually it kind of dissipates. But you will still see those same people who believed, you know, the world was going to end in 2012. I always make a religious joke that technically, if you read a lot of religious texts, only God knows the exact date of the end of the world, if God exists. Therefore, I just joke that these cults keep getting it right, and he just goes, "God damn it!" and moves it to another date.
Right,
just keeps getting annoyed and moving it.
just keeps messing with them.
Yeah,
but I mean,
keeps pushing it on.
As someone who grew up in the church, it does say that nobody knows, not even the angels, when the world's going to end. But you got all these religious cults out there saying, "Oh, this is the day." Well, how do you square that with the Bible that says that you don't know? But we don't do religion and politics on this channel. But I had to say that, you know, just that I think taking a swipe at the cults isn't going to get me deplatformed.
No, and that's a big part of it. It's like I always just joke about that of like it just gets pushed forward, and that's what you see with a lot of cults, religious or not. If they have a predict the end of the world, then it comes and goes. You know, Jim Jones aside, you know, where they, you know, suicide cults are different because they will make that end. That it will end. Although I think ironically, there's still a few of them left that didn't make it in time. That there's only like 3 or 4. And I saw somebody else who actually, one of the comments earlier brought up the Covenant Arm and Sword of the Lord, which was another kind of Christian identitarian cult in, I think it was Arkansas. And there's actually a great book on that by a man named Kerry Noble, who was actually like the second in command of it. And he actually negotiated the entire cult's surrender to the ATF. Amazing book because it's written from his perspective on what he wanted out of the collective and how it went so wrong so quickly. So it's a great book.
They do get extra credibility because it rhymed. I mean, the sword of the Lord. And you got to have something going for you, at least like rhyme. Cliff.
All right. Yeah, Tony Casper for $4.99. The Sharon LMNO Bay Gale pled out to 8 years, and her boyfriend went to trial and was convicted, reviewing 15 years.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't know that she took a plea, but that's how this always ends up. I've said it before. There's only one way that this story ends.
Well, you saw it with like News Now Nebraska taking pleas because they don't want to go with the process, even though they think they're right, because they ultimately, I think, fully believe that they won't. They're better off taking a plea deal.
Yeah, there's tons of them. Eric Brandt is in prison.
Thank God.
I always forget his name. What's the whiny kid from New England?
Josh Abrams.
Josh Abrams is in prison.
I can't stand him.
Right?
I grew up near him, and he sounds just like a relative of mine. And he
Oh,
actually
no.
he audited a police station that I had to go to for a very serious incident, and I was very upset with my fiance, and I could only imagine my reaction had he been in there that day. I would have been irate.
I said this. I debated a guy named Amazing Audits months ago, and I told him, I was like, "There's only one way. There's this train track you're on only ends at one station, and that station is prison." And he didn't believe it. And since then, Eric Brandt went to prison, and he said at the time that Eric Brandt was one of his heroes. Eric Brandt wasn't in prison at the time, and now he is. I think he got 12 years, Tina?
12 to 18, I think.
Something like that. And then, Josh Abrams went to prison, and now Glenn Serio has been sentenced to a stint in jail, I think 60 days. And North Carolina Tyrant Hunter has been sentenced to jail. All these guys are going to jail, and all the rest of them still think that they're on this noble path. Like they're gonna, shine the light on that, statutes aren't laws. But guess what? The courts aren't buying it. All of you guys are going to prison. So you can either, go get a job and take care of your family like you're supposed to, because guess what? Everybody in the country has a help wanted sign outside of their business. So it's not like you can't get a job. Go get a job. It's not that hard. I've been doing it for 30 years. 30 years since I got my first job. It's not that hard. So come on, people. Get with the program.
Hell, I'm actually legally blind. I have very little peripheral vision.
Really?
And I work from home and love what I do with research. I've still had a job almost since I was 16. And I think I was unemployed for 5 months after my PhD because of the pandemic and trying to find one.
Mm-hmm.
But I've still had a job. I've never stopped working. And I only see 20% of what I can see.
It's just not that hard. But
no. I mean, my dad said he'd work at McDonald's if he had to keep.
Absolutely. If I lost my job today, I would, let's say we were in some sort of a depression, I'd pick up cans on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what it took to feed my family. But then you got guys like PayPal Patty, and I know he's not making a lot of money on YouTube because nobody watches his stuff. But still, he can't be bothered to get a job. Not only does he have a wife, he's got a young daughter. I think she might be 2 by now.
Yeah, she's still an infant.
Right. Get a job, dude. Everybody is hiring. You got no excuse. But no, you can't be bothered. You have to be unemployed and beg for PayPal donations. It's ridiculous.
All right.
Sorry to rant. I just have to rant.
You do it every fucking time.
I have to rant. I can't help it.
Yeah. You'd be off brand if you didn't.
All right. I'm going to ask this question. It gives context to the next 2 super chats. So, Trans Girl says, very important question. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No.
You stop that.
No.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I would say yes. I do like it.
I'm
sad to say,
on.
but I do. I love it.
I was really liking it too.
Once in a while, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something I'm not going to go get a Hawaiian pizza every single time. But if it's there, I will eat it.
It's the devil.
And then Swamp Pirate for $2 says pineapple belongs on pizza. And Corrections 101 for $2 says pineapple does not belong on pizza.
Pineapple belongs in mixed drinks and that's pretty much about it. Like fruit salad. Yeah, fruit salad. Yeah, there we go.
See, this is the debate people really want to see instead of like debates against auditors. I can only imagine how that would go.
I think there was one recently, wasn't there?
What? Which one?
Pineapple on pizza.
No, was there?
I
Did somebody do that?
seem to think there was one. I thought it was like, I don't want to speak out of turn, like if I'm wrong, but I thought it was like Glober Mom and somebody else.
Glover Mom,
Like,
you're here. Did you have a pizza pineapple? You know what I'm saying?
if
I can't even say it. It's so bad.
if not, she knows who did. But I'm pretty sure there was a
No.
pineapple on pizza debate. But go ahead, Cliff. Sorry.
Do you have one, Marvel, or?
No,
yeah, it's her turn.
nobody's adding me.
All right.
Nobody wants me to ask Google. Yeah.
K-Rab for $9.99 says Natalie's channel is an example of how necessary it is to get a low explanation of how a particular field. She grew rapidly because there wasn't anyone doing it.
Yeah, that is true, Dr. Matt. Yeah, Natalie, lawyer chick. I don't know if you are aware of her channel, but like she blew up. She got to 20,000 subscribers in something like I don't know, 6 weeks or so. It was crazy how fast her channel grew because there was a vacuum of people talking about the things that she was talking about, and I think that you could fill that same niche. Of I know we're just giving fuel to your fiance who's gonna
Because she's right.
just dogpile you after this.
Oh yeah, I already know she will.
Yeah,
I don't know if she's still watching, but she probably is.
yeah.
No.
Hello, Dr. Matt's girlfriend.
No.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's you might be surprised. I mean, not all channels. I mean, I struggled for 2 years before I hit 1,000 subscribers. It was bad. I think I was putting out videos, nobody was watching them, and then one day it was sort of like the Big Bang. Like one day it just started expanding exponentially. So, but there's other channels like Natalie's that just right out of the gate just blow up. So yeah, I think you should start a channel.
I'm looking for somebody just said that they asked a question, but they added Cliff instead. So like Daniel Holmstrom, ask again, maybe.
Oh, I might have had it. Hold on.
Oh wait, he's pointing to it. He's pointing to it. Is it cute? Did you find it?
No, unless it was like a
I found
while
it.
ago.
Yay, I found it. Okay, so I wasn't with the program on Southsets for a very long time. I believe things come in threes. So we had the flat earthers, now Southsets. Do any of you guys see what might be next?
Oh God.
I would say auditors would be.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's becoming a bigger thing, and I think that's what you're going to find. It's the same thing with like sovereign citizens, is that it continues to increase because law enforcement and courts are not aware of the underlying issue, and then as it becomes more and more clear, you'll start to see that magazines like Police One and these kind of practitioner-oriented pieces will start coming out about how to deal with these situations, and then that's when it becomes much more. I haven't seen any instances where auditors have been violent. Not that I can, at least not in the act of doing it.
Well, Glenn wants to sweep the leg.
Right. They claim that they're going to. There's tons of videos out there saying of them telling the cop, like, if you touch me, I'll defend myself.
Or pepper spraying people.
Yeah. That too. They're
having people.
They're happy to pepper spray civilians. Like they'll go to a place and, some people will take exception to what they're doing and get in their face. And once they get within arm's reach of the auditor will pepper spray them.
Yeah, it's furry potatoes bear mace fight in the street outside the dispensary, I think it was.
Yeah, and since that happened, there's been, I know, at least 3 or 4 other instances where that's happened. and you can't do that. That's illegal, but they still do it because.
Oh, actually, I'll be back in one moment.
Okay,
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
it's easier if you just keep like a picture under the desk, and then you don't have to like get up. You just mute for a second.
All right. The next question is for him, so I'm gonna wait.
Yeah, just read some statements, or if there's
Okay.
a question for us.
Ziggy for the facts, member for 5 months. Debunkers says, is anti-soft legislation a priority?
Well, that might be for him too, though.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let's see.
If there's like something about a stupid pink submarine, do that one. Or, windows and curtains and.
Elder Grown for $5 says, I had a thought and then it went away. Schrodinger's cat, 2021.
That's true. Yeah, and that happens every single day. Like I'm not the only one that walks into a room and then
No.
you stand there and you're like, why
did I walk in here?
why did I come in here? Like, what? I was gonna do something.
Iceman for Canadian $6.99 says, great to get this out there. Now for cart narcs. Not sure where they go.
Oh God, I hate them. Sorry.
Yeah, somebody did a video on them the other day.
It was Radical.
Radical.
No, it was somebody other than Radical.
Oh,
It was.
I took him to task for his wrong point of view on that. Wrong. Well.
Oh, it was Creaky Blinders did a video on him.
Oh well, he's wrong too. What did he say?
Well, he said that Cart Narcs was a Karen.
He's not just a Karen. He's a everything. I don't know. So somebody asked me a question. What is that noise? AMG is Mr. Sparky your favorite part in Salver's videos? Yes.
Like
Wouldn't you say too?
My favorite Sovereign Citizen videos is when the canine gets involved.
Oh yeah, but that doesn't happen too often.
I've got one video on my channel of the Sovereign Citizen, and it was so perfect because the cop walks up, the canine.
That one that everybody has,
yeah, and he tells the guy, he's like, he warns him, he's like, I guarantee you, as I am a man standing here, that we will smash your window. I will send this 120-pound dog through the window.
Belgian Malinois.
Yeah, and then we will drag you both out, at which time my dog will apply pain compliance until we can get you cuffed. And that's exactly what happened.
Classic.
And then the cop bends down to the guy and said, what did I tell you was going to happen? Right?
Yeah.
It was like, it was.
He didn't want to do it either,
He didn't want to. He didn't want to send his dog through the window, and have his dog in harm's way. But he did it. And the guy, like, how did he not know that that's what was going to, did he think like it wasn't going to?
He thought they were still like, remember what he said right before it happened? Guys, I think they're serious about this.
Right. Like,
what?
I mean, I don't know if he had never been bitten by a dog or anything. It's a lot like people that have never been pepper sprayed. Like when I was in the military, I was pepper sprayed in training, and it hurts. But I've heard a lot of people that have never been pepper sprayed be like, yeah, that's nothing. Like until you've been pepper sprayed, it hurts. It's probably the same thing as like if you've never been bitten by a 120-pound dog. Like, you're like, oh no, how bad can that hurt? Yeah, when that dog clamps down on your arm or leg, it hurts. That's why he was screaming like a little girl and bleeding all over the place when they drug him out of the car.
Yeah.
Those videos are great. I wish there were more.
Oh yeah. So.
Oh, you should have. I think I posted one in your Discord that was I went through YouTube searching some of the keywords that I used before that are like older, like accepted for value, and I found one guy that was in a headdress announcing his.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, this is great. It's not a fez, but it's a headdress. I'm okay with this.
I think that was Geronimo Bay.
Yep.
Okay.
Geronimo.
It's
Oh
funny
my God.
how we all know who all these characters are.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny.
All right. So American Bee Savage, member for 3 months to bunkers, asks Dr. Matt, should submarine windows have pink drapes?
You said that already, didn't you?
No, I don't think so. I think we
No,
have
no,
Another
things up.
one? Oh,
Yeah,
God.
the other one was different.
Oh, God.
I mean, they wouldn't need blackout curtains, that's for sure.
That's what I
Yeah.
was going to say before, though. Can you imagine this type of behavior during like the blackouts in London, where they say, you can't make me black my windows out. You know what I'm saying? Like, why
Oh,
do
the
people
Germans
act like
won't
that
bomb.
now? You know why?
Yeah, I can let a little bit of light out. It's fine. They won't know where to aim.
Yeah,
They
Right.
even in Massachusetts, the state house is like this giant gold-plated dome, and they painted it black during World War II
Yeah.
just in case.
but like now, if that happened now, you have all these asshats who be like, well, you can't. It's a mandate's not a law, or whatever. That they would say to that. Like you have the anti-maskers who won't wear a mask. It's the same thing. If this was you have scientists who say if this was a pandemic of more serious virus, it could be an extinction event.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and here's another thing. Like, again, I always talk about, and I know I'm a broken record talking about first world problems.
Yeah, you are.
It's in the past, these people would just all go away. We wouldn't have to worry about them. Like
Okay,
if they were like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory that you shouldn't like walk out into the woods at night because a lion might get you. Like they would just be like, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And they would just walk out in the woods and they would never come back. So we wouldn't have to worry about them anymore. But now we have all these fail safes, we'll take care of you. If you can't afford food because you can't be bothered to get a job, we'll give you food. Like there's all of these things that these people that are nonconformists, they can be free to continue to be nonconformists because we're just going to take care of you. We're going to keep you alive, even if you're too stupid to keep yourself alive.
Yeah.
I think the biggest issue with the kind of anti-mask thing is you have those people who have legitimate psychiatric claustrophobia concerns that can't put something covering their face because of a post-traumatic stress issue.
right.
And they get lumped in with these groups when they legitimately can't. But then you have the perspective of the people who legitimately are immunocompromised. They didn't leave their house for months.
Thank you.
If
Right.
not, are still not leaving.
Right.
And, it's like those are the people that are really what you're trying to protect, is to make sure their family member doesn't get sick and bring it home.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's that way, and we were wearing, like, the beginning of it, we were all wearing N95 masks because one, we had them for painting, and that was the only reason we ended up having them when it all started. But it just generally to protect the most vulnerable.
But these people that, like all of the First Amendment auditors, every single one of them, as far as I could tell, they all of a sudden had medical exemptions. And so these places were inundated with these auditors who said they all had medical exemptions. So when somebody came along who actually had one, now they're being scrutinized because they've already had 5 people in there that were just frauditors, like lying about having them. So when somebody came along that actually had one, so it's sort of like the little boy that cries wolf, except when the person who was actually legit crying wolf wasn't the person that lied about crying wolf the first 4 times. So they're actually hurting people that actually have these ailments to where they're medically exempt because they're willing to lie. Yeah, am I making sense?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
It's hard to hear you over Cliff's banging.
Sorry.
ahead, sir.
Ziggy for the Facts, member for 5 months, Debunkers asks, is anti-soft legislation a priority?
Not anywhere that I've heard of.
Never heard that it was.
I mean,
yeah.
It's happening, but I don't think it's a priority.
Okay. Arcadia Moon for $10 says, do people tend to enter this stuff after certain life events? Like divorces and heavy debts seem like highly common reasons.
I think foreclosures is a main one.
Going to jail.
Any kind of financial issue, generally that's what starts it for a lot of sovereign citizens, because that was what they found online of, I can go through this 5-year debt management program and live on a shoestring budget, or I can file this paperwork. And generally that's the route somebody will try to see if it works.
The A for B type thing, right? Except there's no value.
Yeah.
Just sign away, they give you a bill, sign your name and put a red ink thumbprint, and give it back to them. Or the other one where you use your social security number as a bank.
That's what happened with
because we all were sold.
Heather Antucci and Robert Bean.
That all goes back to the commercial perspective that we're all assets for the federal government. There's a value associated with it. And by forwarding a bill to the reserve, you're essentially paying it with the assets in your name.
Yeah. So she was a guru, Heather Antucci, who tricked this guy, Robert Bean, into believing that his social security number was a bank account. And he was in debt, and that's how they get you. They get you at your most vulnerable time. And so she tricked him into thinking that his social security number was a bank account. And so he started withdrawing all this money from the from USAA because he was a veteran. And there was a flaw in their banking system that you could buy all of these bonds and then immediately sell them back. And they would put the money in your bank account immediately, which is sort of like what Navy Federal does for me. If I deposit some money, it may not actually be there yet, but they'll go ahead and credit it to my account. So that's what it was doing for him. And he withdrew all that money. He paid off all of his debt, and he bought a brand new truck, and he bought this $250,000 RV before any of this stuff actually cleared, because it takes days for that to happen. And so when he was going to pick up the RV, this was a great big $250,000 motorhome. And that's when the FBI met him there and arrested him. And so he got like 12 years, and I think she got like 6. And so they're still in prison because they believed all of this nonsense about your social security number being a bank account. I followed that whole trial all the way
Wow,
through.
yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Well, the whole time, but there was all these YouTube channels that were every day of the trial. After in the afternoon, after all it was done, they were saying, "Oh yeah, you should have seen how like the prosecution is terrified. They know that they're on the ropes." And then I think the jury deliberated for like an hour. It was like nothing.
Yeah.
But the whole time they were convinced that this was going to reshape the fabric of the United States, and that they were winning, and the delusion was just so strong in these people.
Okay, so I'm being asked where the paper he wrote is available online.
I could maybe link it. Well, no, I can't link it. Maybe if I
Send
put
it
it
to
in
me. Send it to me, and I'll put it out there.
my.
Can you
Let's
send it
see.
to me?
I can send it to you. Hold on. Let me find his
Okay.
email where he emailed it to me, and I'll forward
I'll
it
get
to
it for
you.
you guys. I'll get
It's
it for you.
it's crackhore@crackhore.net.com, right?
Bitch, I will shut the stream down.
It would have been last year, so it'd be a while ago. But I can forward another copy.
Cause she do, Beaver. See, cause she do.
Just carry on while I do
Okay.
this.
Go ahead, Cliffy.
Tones
hey,
the
Mr. Robinson Cat.
Tones the
Sorry.
okay. Go ahead.
Just say hi to Schrodinger's cat's wife. Hi, Nicole.
Okay.
Love you.
Tones the geek for $10 says, what softset / more group would you say is most organized / delusional? I remember the Republic of Canada group in Canada who think they alone have dissolved the country and established a new one.
Yeah, they all come and go. So I don't think there's really any that are like subsisting for long periods of time. The most famous were probably the Montana Freemen, who actually created their own like compound in Montana. And they had if I remember correctly, they had a standoff with like the federal authorities at one point.
Yeah, they did. A firefight.
Yeah. They were probably the most organized and well structured.
That was the Bundys, right?
No, that was pre-Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
And then the Bundys are another one, but they're not really organized, and that drew in a lot more than the Sov Sit group. That was a lot of like land rights activists, and that was all over grazing rights with them, and owing money to the federal government for grazing rights. Probably right now, it's probably the Moors. Honestly, like the kind of Jamal's group, that you see a lot more stability within them than anyone else, because they kind of stick together and actually physically show up. You usually don't see the physical representation of sovereign citizens in court like that.
We want to be talking about Ruby Ridge, and if Ruby Ridge.
No, this is separate. Ruby Ridge, Waco were in the early 90s, shortly before the Oklahoma City bombing.
And that was true.
And yeah, this is I think it's a little bit after that, probably early 2000s, I think, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Simon Mitchner for £5 says, Dr. Matt, your opinion, and relax AMG, no subs here. Taser then cuff, cuff then taser, or taser till crispy? Hail Google girl.
Hey, now, no.
Oh God. Ironically, one of my previous job, I was actually developing use of force policies. So I have very specific opinions on use of force continuum and matrices. I developed an entire one that will eventually come out in the next probably 6 months or so for my old job. It would have to be taser then cuff. The other way around is just torture, pretty much.
Right.
Unless they're running, or like they've slipped the cuffs and they're running, kind of a thing.
So we had a very specific use of force continuum in the military. And it started out with just your presence was like step one. Just being there was a deterrence. And then it was verbal commands, soft controls, as like taking you by the arm and leading you towards the door. Hard controls, I'm going from memory, which would be like a nightstick or something. And then it would be something like taser, pepper spray, and then deadly force. So there's like a whole continuum and you didn't necessarily have to follow that whole continuum. Like if you walk in to a space and like somebody's about to stab somebody else with a knife, you could go directly to deadly force. But like, is that similar to your continuum that you developed?
Yeah, Yeah, I what I developed was a matrix, so it actually intertwined the level of resistance of the subject and the use of force, so it's more structured. So something like a passive resistance, refusing to leave a vehicle when you have other means to get them out, is pain compliance.
Yeah.
Control holds, things like that. And then as you move up to active resistance, really pushing away, pulling away, then it goes higher into things like OC spray or pepper spray, baton hits, physical strikes.
Yeah.
And then as you go higher, getting into something that's more aggressive, tasers, and then I even included canines.
Yeah.
Because canines are one thing that most departments do not address as a use of force.
I think they're underused. They're underutilized. I think canines should be utilized a whole lot more. In my experience with watching all of this stuff,
it depends. There's a lot of evidence that show canines are not as well trained as we would assume they are. At least not for local law enforcement.
Right, and I would say well trained canines.
Yes. Yeah. Well trained where they get continuous retrain. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the military where my last tour in the military was at SEAL Team 2, and I mean, we had canines that would airdrop out of airplanes, with their handler. Those were some well trained canines.
I don't know if I like that though.
Oh no, they were delightful. I mean, they'd be in our spaces and just curl up on the ground just like any other dog.
Yeah, but the dogs are very forgiving. So, like, even if they were terrified during it, they're gonna forgive their handler.
In my experience, they seem to think it was a blast.
Okay.
I dogs.
I believe you.
Yeah, no, they were typically German Shepherds or Labradors, and they thought it was a blast. They were like, "Oh yeah, we get to jump out of this plane again." I mean, and they're strapped to their dad, So
no, I get it.
They have that level of trust that Dad's here. Everything's going to be okay. But they seem to have fun with it.
Well, they don't understand what's happening. They don't know they could die, and they like putting their head out the window. So I guess it's just a big rush.
And then they might get to land and bite some bad guy.
All right. So. TM for $5 says, I came in late. Has Matt touched on the big organized groups like the Covenant and the Sword in the Arm?
I don't even know what that is.
No, that was the reference that I was bringing up of like a good perspective on the inside of a cult. Is a guy who was the second in command of that group, which was out of Arkansas, the Covenant, Sword in the Arm of the Lord, wrote a book all about it. And he did ended up doing like 9 or 10 years in prison. Oh, wow. But he negotiated their cult surrender, and he tracked the beginning to end every step of the process from his own journal, from it starting just as a religious commune all the way through being Christian identitarians and believing their leader is God. Very fascinating.
Okay, cool. Doug Donahue for $5 says, is Sealand in the UK an early version of Softset? Sounds like it to me. How far back does this go?
So I saw that that comment. I actually had to look up what that was because I couldn't remember. I don't think so. That seemed so. As a little bit of background on what that is, essentially somebody went to like a defunct radio tower out in the off the British Isles and just took it over and essentially went, we are our own country, and stuck a flag there, and it became essentially a way to fight against what they viewed as British overreach against censorship. They would broadcast from there and say things that the government didn't like. I think there's actually a movie based on it, but I can't recall off the top of my head. It was like a pirate radio idea, and then they just created their own country, and they've gone back and forth with England saying, no, you're not your own country. Yes, we are. And I don't necessarily think so, because I think it was more going against a certain thing as opposed to being sovereign citizen. Sovereign citizen, we know them as generally early 2000s. maybe more like mid 90s is when you've really, Terry Nichols was reportedly a sovereign citizen who was involved in the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah, and they say Tim McVeigh was. I don't really know if I buy that Tim McVeigh was. I mean, I know he had some sovereign citizen like tendencies, but I don't know if he was actually. I don't come down on that one way or the other. I'm not sure.
All right. TNPIR 4002 for $15 says, using my biggest super chat yet just to say one thing. OPT lawyer, feel better and come back to us. Miss you on stream. You're way better looking than Artie.
Oh, wow. That's great. I love that one. And I will make sure he sees that.
Yeah. Yeah. OPT, I mean, he's been on this roller coaster for way, way too long. And I hope my friend gets better. And, and I can announce on a happy note that, Cranky Patriot, what the hell was his channel name?
Cranky Patriot, yeah.
Yeah, Cranky Patriot that disrespected OPT after our debate. That wasn't really a debate. He deleted his channel. So there's that. So yeah, I let OPT know that we made a victory. For whatever reason, the guy deleted his channel. It's probably because he got so embarrassed after we exposed him for what he was, which is a hateful, horrible human being.
Yeah. All right. Gary Little for $5 said, should I mention it's close to 60 years since I got my first job? Retirement is better, though. Lets me watch Schrodinger's cat.
I agree. I mean, anybody that's in any situation where they can just watch my channel, I think that's like the nirvana of any human experience.
Colony L3 for $1.99 says, pineapple pizza eaters can't be trusted. JK, LOL. All right. Michael Kraus for $4.99 says, if pineapple belongs on pizza, then AMG belongs on a date with me. LMAO. I got a better chance of building a nuclear sub with windows and pink carpet.
You got a fan out there, AMG.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But AMG already has a crush.
Yeah.
And it's Clive Wells.
Who's that? Who?
Yeah. Who?
No, seriously, who is that?
Clive Wells.
From Ask a Scientist.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. Okay, my bad.
Yeah. The one that you wanted me to hook you up
cute.
with,
Yeah.
that from
Very good
Cambridge University, the math professor.
Can you stop now?
No, I can't stop. The one that you kept saying that you wanted to go on a date with, and that
Oh my God, yeah. Okay, now stop.
That you dream about at night.
All night, every night.
Yep.
All right. William Graber for $5 says, are the frauditors' PayPal donations taxable income?
Yeah, what you make on YouTube, absolutely.
Well, PayPal. I don't.
Well, yeah, that's from the YouTube. Okay. Well, yeah,
no. PayPal's not from. I don't know. I would imagine if it reaches a certain threshold, it would be taxable. I don't know. That's something for somebody that's way out.
Income. It's income. The income's taxable.
It's way outside of our areas of expertise.
Yeah. All right. Austin Groner for $1.99 says, start a channel I would definitely follow.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Thinking about it. It'll definitely be something I actually, my friend who asked that ridiculous question about our research that was overly complicated, he texted me and he's like, if you need help, I'd do it. I'm like, okay.
Cool. Douglas Wooten for $5 says, thanks, never heard of solving up till 3 months ago. I'm 63. All I can say is wow. I guess he must have meant solves it.
I think so, yeah. But autocorrect probably.
Yeah. Liz Lecky Swanson, member for 11 Months Skeptic, says, as a Native American, that guy wearing the headdress pisses me off to no end.
Yeah,
Um,
that was so.
Oh,
cringe.
at the Capitol, you're saying? Or no, or the
Yeah.
more that does? Because
The
there's more than one.
the more it was so cringeworthy.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Uh,
I thought I'd shut it off. God dang it.
90s nostalgia nerd for $5 says most of the individuals who are so against vaccines are likely alive today because they were vaccinated as children.
Yes, that's a great
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, I mean we obliterated like smallpox and like whooping cough and things like that, and now there's little clusters of those things that have come back, and these people can't put two and two together that these are not things anymore. Like smallpox aren't things anymore. Like whooping cough aren't things, but now they're coming back because a significant portion of the population is not getting like MMR vaccinations, for example.
Yeah, just go look up what an iron lung is for people who survived polio.
Right?
Oh my god!
That was
Yeah,
horrible. That's the rest of our life, Matt.
yeah. You're just that's the rest of your life. You just lay there and wait to die.
Oh god, it's like
Yep.
that movie, Johnny Got His Gun, where at the end he's just no arms, no legs, that thing covering his face for the rest of his life. It's horrible.
Yeah, I don't understand these people that I don't. I try to like put myself in the shoes of somebody that's that stupid, and I can't do it.
Yeah. Liz Lecky Swanson for $5 says the Sioux Falls, South Dakota police bought a new dog for their canine force. Turned out she was pregnant. Now it's K-17.
Oh my god.
Okay, and I'm caught up on supers.
Wait, no. There's one that just came in.
Is there?
TM again? 5?
Oh, it just showed up on mine. Mine's
Yeah.
delayed.
Okay.
My mom's got an old computer,
It
so
had to get all the way to Canada.
yeah.
Okay.
TM for $5 says Terry Nichols was a flat earther, sovereign citizen. Terry Nichols talks the same garbage sovereign citizens talk today. There weren't cell phones then.
Right.
That's the big advancement that really let sovereign citizens and things like that kind of come around again. It's the internet.
Yeah,
Before, you had to go to this debt relief event and pay for a ticket to get in. And that was the internet gave them a platform to host their own websites, share content online, and use social media to spread the message.
right.
And cell phones, it has a camera in everybody's pocket.
And it's even worse than that because it leads to all these other conspiracy theories. Because let's say you're a mom and your son or daughter has been diagnosed with this illness, and you go online and you do a Google search because you want to learn like what do I need to be doing about this? Like what kind of specialist do I need to be seeking out? And you search whatever, autism. You might very well end up on a website that says that it's not real, that all you need to do is give them honey with lemon in it, or
Vaccines caused it.
or that vaccines caused it, or you can buy my special homeopathic remedy,
Chili juice.
Snake oil.
yeah. And or they'll say something like the government did it because they're trying to do population control.
Yeah.
And there's all of these things that the internet has brought forth that people, especially vulnerable people, like if you tell me that my son is terminally ill, I'm going to be in a very vulnerable state.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'm going to be grasping at anything. It's not even so much related to your intelligence, because at that point, let's be honest, you're not using your intellect. You're going to gravitate towards anything that can save your child.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just parasites that are looking for vulnerable people that they can swindle out of their money and sell them, like you said, Dr. Matt, snake oil.
Yep.
And that's the internet's a double-edged sword. There's infinite knowledge on the internet, and there's also infinite scams. Infinite disinformation on there. And
one thing I would always suggest, if you go on Twitter and find academics. Academics use Twitter like no tomorrow to share information, new research results, project ideas, giving each other advice, and it's all on there. That's what I use it for.
Yeah,
I like communicate with other academics.
Great, that's a great idea.
I like Google Scholar as well.
That's usually where I start. If I'm looking for something on a subject, I start with Google Scholar and go from there to see what I can find. Even court cases, you can look it up through their case law,
Right?
like selection, and you'll find it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For everybody watching, if you're not aware, there's Google, where you just find whatever's on the internet. But there's Google Scholar that is primarily peer-reviewed sources, sources that have been vetted by other academics that will say, this is actually a legit thing. You're not going to go on there and find flat Earth or anti-vax type things.
You'll find controversial stuff, but it's academically controversial. Of this is my perspective, and it's been vetted that the data is accurate. Or you won't find it won't always be correct because it's always changing, and that's like the idea of
that's what science is. Yeah,
things always change, and we learn something new, and we go from there. Which generally, academic research is double-blind, peer-reviewed, meaning they don't know who wrote it, I don't know who read it. I can guess. You live in a small enough community studying sovereign citizens. You generally know who wrote what you're reading, or you might, but it's part of your ethics to say, hey, I do know who wrote this. Do you still want me to review this? Do you want me to read this and give you my opinion? Because I do know who wrote it. And generally they'd say, no, we'll find somebody else. And they keep doing that. And you go through multiple rounds at times. That was my friend Mike and I submitted an article, it got a revise. We fixed it, sent it back. It got denied. Now we'll go to a different journal, fix it up with what we were suggested to do, resubmit it, and go through the process again. You're not reading a first draft of anything. You're reading like the 30th draft, most likely.
Right. So we're past 3 hours. Do we have any other things, or else we'll let Dr. Matt say his closing statement?
I have nothing.
I got one more.
I have a couple of questions, but small ones, easy ones. Like from David Smith. Oh, sorry. Are the trespassing arrests that some of these First Amendment orders are getting, do you think they're going to affect their employment opportunities later in life?
Anything you do on social media will affect your employment opportunities later in life.
Yes.
Think of how many like celebrities who didn't get the next role because of something they posted on social media 10 years ago. You can find it. It'll come back to you, particularly if you put it online and it's a video that can't be denied.
Yeah. Well, think about like Kevin Hart. He was supposed to do the Oscars, and a tweet that he had made 10 years prior, like, kept him from, they fired him before he could even host the Oscars because of a tweet that he had made.
Right.
Or Ken Jennings to host Jeopardy. Something he had posted on social media a decade ago that he admitted, he's like, I regretted it. He goes, I've learned, I've aged, I've matured. He's like, I made a mistake, but it still will prevent him from being on there.
Yeah, when I was about to retire from the Navy, the first thing I did was I nuked my entire Facebook page, and I've never been on
Ooh.
Facebook since because, I mean, I knew I'd been on Facebook for, you know,
Mhm.
7, 8 years by then, and I know what I had written on Facebook. There was mostly just jokes, you know.
Yeah.
It was like shock jock type stuff, just
Oh yeah. So that's
you know,
yeah.
to get a rise out of people. So about 6 months before I retired from the Navy, I deleted my Facebook page
Smart.
because I knew that at the level of jobs that I was going to be searching for, they were probably going to search social media, and luckily, I did it just in time before they could find all the horrible, you know, things that I said.
Look at the text I sent you last.
Don't look at text when you write them. I typically they go straight to my.
Speaking of snake oil, I do love they're putting microchips in vaccines.
Oh
Or,
yeah,
you know,
right?
You're
Oh, my
carrying
God.
a microchip and a GPS device in your pocket constantly.
Right, they can track you no matter where you go.
I had to call 911 today to report a potentially drunk driver at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm somewhere in Pennsylvania, and I'm like, I don't know what township I'm in. I'm on this route going by this street, and they just went, "Oh, you're in lower this township," and I'm like,
Wow.
Damn it. I'm like, you know where I am then. I don't even know where I am because the GPS in my phone tells you where I am.
Right.
And they never did catch me, by the way, just so you know.
But
So it was
thing
you
is
with the red
also-
Tacoma.
It was a Tundra.
Also, that like each vial has more than one person's vaccine in it, so there'd have to be a bunch of chips, and how they're going to get one?
Right. How do you make sure that
It's
everybody
stupid.
gets? What if somebody gets 2 and another person gets 0?
Exactly. That just doesn't help us.
Well, we had that one sovereign citizen that went to, I think it was like a CVS or something, and he wanted to see the vial. And he asked the lady, he was like, "So this is my this is my vaccine." And she was like, "Yeah." And so he just like gets up and he runs out of the store with it. It's like that was like 6 or 7 doses. And then he was
Yes.
surprised. He was surprised when the police came and arrested him.
Yeah, what an idiot.
Oh
Yeah.
wow! So Simon Cowell says the woman that acted as Cara Dune in The Mandalorian was fired by Disney due to what she tweeted during the U.S. election.
Yep.
It happens. Like, we know somebody who can't get a job now because of internet drama,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
Yep. I saw your text, and
Mhm.
yes, that is true.
Oh, I know.
All right. Should I do the last super chat?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. Doug Donahue for $5 says mutual combat. Just saying.
Sweep the leg.
And Hythe Kent, new member. Welcome to the bunkers.
Yeah. So I don't know, Matt, if you know who Glenn Serio is.
Oh, absolutely.
He watches the channel.
He's just making sure. I can't blame him because he
I'm
doesn't
still-
want to assume anything.
I'm still asking because I
Yeah.
don't want to say, "Hey, what do you think about
Glenn.
what do you think about Glenn?" And then him be like, "Oh, no idea." But
just the OC spray.
oh, that
start
was
of your
that was
videos.
great. Yeah. Did you see my latest of him? Not my latest video, the one today, but the one before, when he was screaming at the cops about meet me up the street.
Yeah, when he was driving, was that the one he was driving by on the highway or my?
Driving by the car crash, and he was like, "Meet me up the street, mutual combat,
Yeah.
hand-to-hand
That was
combat."
horrible.
Like, I think like maybe a 12-year-old could probably pound him into the ground. Like, why is he challenging all these people to fight when he looks like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man? Like, but if he like let himself go.
Yeah, it's amazing when you see some of the things that people will yell at other people and then put on the internet.
That's the thing. Like that video that I had came from his, like somebody else didn't record that and surreptitiously release it. He put that on his channel. He's proud of that moment.
Oh yeah, he is. He's
like
disgusting, thoroughly disgusting.
Like it just like you said earlier, Tina, zero self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's really bad. But again,
Gotta get the clicks.
yeah, but he doesn't. His channel's dying. It's really sad. He's been coming at me lately, which is funny because he thinks I'm going to respond to his.
The things he says is so it shows how little.
Right. As if I'm gonna fall for that bait. Like, come on, Glenn. Like, you gotta wake up a lot earlier in the morning to get to me. But anyway, do we have any more, or are we gonna wrap it up?
The page crashed on me, so I'm trying to reload it right now. I don't know. Do we have any more supers, Marvel?
I think we have a new member. Hi, Ken.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Other than that, I see nothing after his new member thing.
Okay, cool.
Let's see if there's any quick questions. Yeah, no, they're talking about anti-vaxxers and stuff. Really, most of it. So yeah. All
right. Well, Dr. Matt.
Anything you want to say?
Yeah, take as much time as you need to do a closer.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Iron Bites comment when he just resubscribed for 2 months of tasers. Why don't we as the Watchdog community raise money and sponsor a fight between one of us and Glenn?
Oh, I'll do it.
I had to laugh at that one. But no, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm definitely thinking about what I could do as a YouTube channel because I know I'm going to be harassed by my fiance and now a couple of friends that were on here.
Great.
So there's definitely going to be some thought in that.
I'm always down to help anybody if you need help with anything, really.
Oh yeah, no,
and a lot of people are saying, please have not the kind of doctor Matt back.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a thought. And like I said, if you guys have questions, can look up my name in Sovereign Citizens, and you'll find my dissertation. I actually just posted it online at ResearchGate, and then I'll have it on my own website.
If you give
shortly.
me it, I'll put it in the description of the.
Yep, I'll send you the link probably tomorrow.
Wonderful.
Once I get it uploaded. I think I have it on there already, actually, but I'll double check and then send it your way so that way you can add it.
Cool. And the fake auditing the USA is in the chat saying he can't be touched.
It's because nobody wants to get near it.
Nobody wants to get near to touch it.
I just love the videos now of like the police in this town being like, "Go home, Glenn."
Yeah, they're
right.
like, oh,
they're just like, "We're done. Go home."
He can't even like get them angry. They just care that little about his. And when he's like, "You failed," or telling them something, like nobody cares about what he thinks. Why does he think anybody? If he passes you, what does that mean? Nothing. If he hates you, that means nothing. And it's silly.
He has a child that he can't be bothered to provide for.
It was taken away.
Oh, I understand that. And that makes it even worse. Like I would be beside myself as a man, or and not even don't even make it a gender thing. As a
parent,
wouldn't you be beside yourself if you could not provide for your own child?
Absolutely. I mean, I had a dog, that's all. And I was like, the dog eats before I do. So yeah. Can't imagine a kid.
I got a few more.
Excuse me. We're being asked about Glenn had a kid. Yeah, he paid. That happens even with escorts, guys. Go ahead.
Okay, TM for $5 says, "Great stuff. Make Matt a regular."
Absolutely wanna.
Some old dude for $5 says, "Glenn is not a master baiter." 2 words.
Yeah.
Iron Bite AD, member for 2 months, Taser, says, "Why don't we as the Watchdog community raise money?" And someone already read that.
You did that. No, you read it.
No, I read it.
No,
someone else did. Yeah.
I am so confused. It's been too long, and I gotta
go. Nightmare 666, new member. Welcome to the bunkers.
Welcome, yay! Go ahead.
Yeah, it looks like that is it.
Oh Jesus. Okay, sorry. I just coughed. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so and Granger is reminding us there's a Facebook page called Glenn Serio's a Dickhead. It's a good page, guys. Go check it out.
Yep.
I bet
Champion
his local
yourself.
police. I bet his local police department has like an SOP, just a Glenn SOP of like, if you
Oh,
interact
yeah.
with him, please call in,
Yeah.
explain what happened. So if he shows up, we already know and we're well aware.
Yeah,
And that's
then
why they're
go-
like, just go home.
And then go get your tetanus shot.
Yeah, they all know him. It's
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And being known by the cops in that way, especially, not a good thing.
Yeah,
Oh, he's actually in the chat.
It's not
I
really
think it's
him.
a fake one.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Kick, I think.
Yeah.
Either Kick or Taco being silly.
So the thing is, like, they brag about it. Like when they interact with the cops, they're like, "You know who I am." Like, that's not
Nobody
a good thing.
knows you.
Well, a lot of times they don't know who they are. It's just their sort of ego. They want to be infamous.
Yeah.
But to me, unless you're like a cop or like maybe like a fundraiser for the cops or something like that, or a paramedic or something, like the cops knowing you is not a good thing.
No.
So they brag about it. It's sort of, silly. But anyway, Dr. Matt, do you have anything else that you wanted to say? Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. We've been going 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah. No, nothing else here. Thank you guys so much. I'll definitely be around. So if you have any questions on this kind of stuff, and I'm definitely interested in getting back into research on this stuff.
Yeah.
After my dissertation, I was like, I need a break.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
This live stream has exceeded my expectations of what we were going to get into tonight, what we were going to get out of it. So yeah, this was great. You, like I said, exceeded our expectations. So that was good. I think Tina's happy with it as well. And
absolutely.
So
I'd be happier if it wasn't.
Yeah. She's in pain. She's got some cracked ribs because
me.
She wouldn't listen, and I had to apply.
Oh my God! Stop
discipline,
you!
Oh
God!
So
Nicole.
Oh, she can get cracked ribs too. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Right. Yo, Nicole, fuck you up. Stop that.
She would stab me.
Yeah.
He's just saying that because he's in a hotel room a couple of states away.
I know, right?
Yeah. I'm about probably 1,200 miles away, so they don't make knives that long.
We got your number though.
Anyway, well, I did change hotel rooms today, so.
Oh.
Yeah. Cliff, what do you got to say?
Oh, just as usual, I had a great time. Thanks everyone for coming, and love you all. Have a great night.
All right. And Tina, what do you got to? What's new on your OnlyFans page?
Anyhow, please remember on Saturday nights I have a new co-host for Ladies Night because Cliff just wasn't fitting in, and that's Mrs. Schrodinger's cat or Nicole, and me and Cliff will be back probably tomorrow night.
Probably not because I'm going out to dinner tomorrow night.
Okay, then maybe I'll be back without it. No kidding. Tuesday maybe then.
Yeah, Tuesday's better.
Okay then.
All right. As for me, I fly back to my home state of Virginia on Thursday morning. I've already got the content for my next video, which I may or may not release before I fly home. Just depends on the workload this coming week. And probably another stream on Sundays. I think that's become a regular thing to where I'm pretty much going to stream every Sunday from now on, unless like something overcomes that event. And that's pretty much all I got. Dr. Matt, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
Nope. Thank you guys again.
Yeah. Thanks for showing up. it's crazy that I asked, like, why didn't somebody ever do a dissertation on this? And then you emailed me and be like, hey, dum I did. So it's great that we have this community to where I can just reach out and ask, do I have anybody in the audience that knows anybody that does X, Y, and Z? And inevitably somebody does.
Yep.
So that's great for being able to, find people out there. And I think that's about it. I think anybody else got anything?
Oh yeah, I do.
No, you don't count. Cliff, do you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, go ahead, Tina.
Pay me, bitch.
Pay you, bitch. Okay, I'll let's get out of here so I can go pay this bitch.
Oh God. Night.
Good night.
Night.
Night.